To interrupt all the awesome conversations going on, but we need to get this party started yet. I would just start by saying welcome to our panel members to convening number 6, and welcome to our collaborators today. I'm excited that you've all chosen to be here and have these conversations about the important issues that we have. I know there has been either confusion or just lack of really knowing and looking at what agenda we had started with and schedule we had started with. So I wanted to just go through a few things just to make sure that we're all on the same page. Today we're holding what would be 2 extra meetings, 2 extra convenings, and you can blame me for that because I felt like as we were working through that we really needed to circle back with business and industry and schools that have partnerships with business and industry, as we're doing this morning, and then also higher education. So that is today. Today was an added piece to the agenda. So value added, if you will, at this point. Next week, on October the 10th, the panel will begin its drafting of a first iteration, first version of the recommended pathways. Then on October the 17th, we're going to have a convening, and I'm really excited about this, where we are inviting all collaborators that have been a part of this process in all of these first meetings to come together to take a look at that draft, look at what we've done, and join us to have feedback for that. That should be an exciting time, going to be a little less formal, and be able to have conversations around the recommendations. We also, the other piece that I want to make sure that everybody understands is we will continue to take public comment via email at our gradpathways_comment@sboe.in.gov, and we'll also continue to take public comment at our meetings as well. So today we'll take public comment this morning, we will take public comment again this afternoon. That I consider that to have been a very, very important part of this process. Those public comments have really formed a lot of the thought process that I think has begun with this. In fact, we've got a person as a collaborator today that was a public comment earlier in the process, and I told him this morning one of the reasons why I felt like we needed to circle back with business and industry again. So hopefully that clears up some of the timeline pieces and that for audience and panel members and collaborators. Again, we started this process with business and higher ed at the table, and we think it's crucial that we come back to this as we come to what I would call more the home stretch of really looking at what these pathways need to look like. This convening this morning is unique in the sense that we have both business and industry at the table. We also have schools that have had partnerships with business and industry, and we want to look at that too on how we do the things that we've been talking about and the values that we have. How do we be flexible? How do we allow for there to be creativity as we work through this? We also have 2 JAG graduates and a student completing adult basic education in Wayne Township joining us with the panel this morning because, again, we think that's very important piece to this as we work through what these need to look like. So I'm excited today to get into the weeds, so to speak, more on this, really begin to look at what this can look like, what these pathways can be and become for our children. And again, we talked about this at the end of last meeting, really creating a place for there to be innovation and creativity as we do this. You had in your handout emailed to you. You also have a copy today. Thought it was important for you to have in front of you recurring themes that we had from these meetings. as well as some of the themes and comments that came out from our technical specialists at our last convening as well last week. So felt like that was important for you to have. So again, excited for this to be happening today. So glad that you're here. So glad that we added these other two convenings so that we can have these conversations and really hopefully bring this full circle back and begin to put this together. So with that, we are going to move to public comment. And again, I would just say that a few norms on public comment. We are listening, and I would say to those making public comment, again, that has been a valuable part of this. We have come back to public comments that have been made several times in this process, and so that's an important piece. We do limit those so that we can make sure that everybody's heard and that it's a fair way to do this. We do limit those to 3 minutes apiece. And Alicia will give you a 30-second warning. That's not to be rude, but just to let you know where you are so that we can, again, be fair to everyone and give everybody the exact same time necessary for public comment. So with that, Alicia, take it away.
Scott Proner.
Morning. My name is Scott Proner.
Oh, sorry, I failed. My mistake, Scott. I'm sorry. We will take public comment right here at this seat. That way you're at a microphone and it's over the other, and we want you at the table for that.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, good morning. My name is Scott Proner, Superintendent for Wauwanii Schools. Would like to thank you first and foremost for your efforts and attempt to tackle this very complex issue, as you guys have well discovered. For far too long, we've operated an education and assessment system that has a single college-centric trajectory. And as we have learned, not only is this is not what is best for students, but also it's not what's best for local employers and our economic development. As a member of the ISET replacement panel and as an educator that has driven to support the needs of employers, I applaud you for your efforts to create several graduation pathways beyond a single assessment. As you continue this work and begin drafting your pathway proposal, I ask that you reflect upon the term flexibility, as I'm sure you've heard that already before. Flexibility must exist for students based on the school's ability to provide opportunities within our each unique local communities. Flexibility must exist for students that have ability to move between pathways. This is particularly important for students that come from high mobility families. Oftentimes schools are the one area where they provide that counseling support. And depending on where we are located, if a student is headed on one trajectory in one part of the state and has to move to another part of the state, that can become very restrictive for them and punitive for them if we can't fit that into what's available within that local community. Flexibility must exist to allow our system to be dynamic and responsive to the needs of our local communities. In Elkhart County, I was in a meeting this past month where the major employers, which is the trailer factors and the health services area, we were at a roundtable meeting. I was brand new, so I didn't say a whole lot. I just sat and listened. But immediately we were talking about employment, and then the concept of I-STEP came into place. And all the employers around the table shook their heads. Why? Because I-STEP does not measure what the employers were looking for. So although assessment will remain a part of the pathways, and I think that's an important part of the pathways, we don't want to restrict our pathways so that we're not able to meet the dynamic needs of our local community. As an educator, please know that we believe in and we support a rigorous system. Please know that. However, it just can't be rigorous. It must be relevant for the community and relevant for our students. So please come in with the concept of rigor and relevance as you are drafting these pathways. Again, I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak this morning. I know you've had a lot of work already, and I know you have a lot of work in front of you, and you have been challenged with a very difficult task. But I know that our field appreciate your thought that you're putting into this, your openness to public comment, and your hard work to get this right for our students and for our state. Thank you.
John Trout.
Good morning. I am John Trout, Superintendent of the Concord Community Schools, located in Elkhart, Indiana. I'm a member of the Indiana Association of Public School Superintendents and also a member of the Indiana Urban Schools Association. I want to thank you, sincerely thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this morning. As a graduation pathway panel, I want to emphasize to you the importance of flexibility in your recommendation. I would like to see us move a single high school, Indiana high school graduation diploma while providing pathway categories distinctions, stackable credentials, options, so that districts like ours can have the flexibility within those categories and options to use the resources and partnerships that truly are available to us. We are proud of all of our students who graduate from Concord High School. Some of our graduates move on to a four-year institution. This pathway, however, is not for everyone. Currently in Elkhart County, we have several thousand jobs in our community that are going unfilled. In our school district, we've started to take steps to form partnerships with local industry to begin addressing this need. As Scott mentioned, we serve on the board. We're board members on the Horizon Educational Alliance of Elkhart County that brings together business leaders and superintendents from across our county to address student and business needs. From this collaboration, a few of the outcomes have been the development of a work ethic certificate, the continued expansion of Manufacturing Day, where a few thousand eighth graders from our county and community tour our local industries, and formation of the business education roundtables in all of our high schools. Our back to school celebration this year with our staff, we created a business panel that provided these leaders the opportunity to share with our staff the knowledge, skills, and dispositions needed by our students when they enter their workforce. At Concord, we have begun the process of developing a partnership with a couple of these companies to begin addressing the needs of our students and their businesses. We just passed last month a $10 million project for our high school, where a new college and career labs will house areas where you literally can pull an RV into our facility and training can occur for our students. Other areas will be devoted to robotic welding, 3D printing, just to name a few examples. Our business partners will be actively engaged in the development of these areas. It's also my intention to begin an online academy to support all of our students regardless of the pathway that they may choose. We are working diligently to align our curricular program to the needs and wants of our students and community while ensuring that we're also meeting the expectations of the Indiana Department of Education. As I mentioned previously, a singular Indiana high school graduation diploma while providing a pathway for categories, distinctions, and stackable credentials and options will allow us the flexibility within those categories to meet the needs of all of our students while ensuring the resources and partnerships available to us. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michelle Moore.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for allowing me to speak to you today. I'm Dr. Michelle Moore, and I'm superintendent of the MSD of Martinsville. I'm also a licensed CPA with private practice experience. I wanted to address you today about the graduation pathways from a combined business and educational perspective. Both the business community and the educational community can both agree on one graduation diploma with many different ways to get there. I believe that one graduation diploma, an Indiana diploma, would provide for the greatest number of our students to succeed while at the same time meeting the ESSA requirements. This diploma could be achieved using multiple pathways, including college preparedness, workforce readiness, and other secondary training avenues. The underlying belief is that there are multiple ways for a Hoosier child to achieve a diploma, all of which revolves around a common framework of basic diploma courses with multiple capstones or credentialing for the diploma. Will the student complete a series of workforce readiness measures, including an internship? Will the student complete coursework to gain admission to one of our stellar universities? Will the student be on a path to obtain credentialing in partnership with one of our community college partners, such as Ivy Tech or Vincennes? The business community and the educational community can also both agree that the graduation pathways are about providing a framework for students so that future success is not up for chance, but on a sustained path for full-time employment. In our own county, Morgan County, our employers have a desperate need for electricians, precision machinists, and welders. All of these workplace certifications should count as a way for a student to reach a high school diploma. These skilled trades have value and should count just as much as a math requirement to pass Algebra 2. I'm also on the board of the Indiana Construction Roundtable Foundation. Statewide, we are facing an acute shortage of skilled tradespeople. Indiana's economy will depend on our high schools training a workforce to fill these jobs in the near future. We must come up quickly with a plan to address the potential shortages facing our state. This will involve working with the education community to identify and develop employability skills for a future workforce. The specific training must be in partnership with others to provide workforce credentialing in areas with job demand. This is the most important economic development issue facing our great state. How do we grow our own workforce to support our business community's needs while providing a job for every Hoosier? This task is no easy task, but ultimately
30
will
seconds.
impact our state for generations. Thank you for looking at how we can support all Hoosier students with one Indiana diploma.
Thank you.
Todd Best?
Good morning. My name is Dr. Todd Best, and I'm the Executive Director for the Indiana Association of School Principals. Thank you again for your time this morning. We as an association have the opportunity to hold meetings across our state and our districts each fall, and we've presented on how these pathways might look. Today, rather than having lots of principals come here and give you those comments, I've tried to pull those together and bring it to you in one particular format. On the topic of flexibility, when asked to define this, they said, this means that students enter at age 14 and they mature a great deal as they exit at age 18. Allow them and us the flexibility to work with these teenagers during this growing time for them. Define paths with flexible opportunities to meet those paths is critical. As we discuss work-based learning, the feedback looked like this. We can utilize our existing programs and we can probably expand on a limited basis to meet the needs of students who really need these experiences. The partnerships that make those experiences valuable are dependent upon the relationships the school has been able to build within the community. Focusing on quality is the right approach, and we can provide students with the skills this panel seems to also desire. Work-based learning experiences should have the flexibility a school can provide and what the community desires. Don't narrowly define what these should be. Students are exiting high school. This was a comment from my principals, with the skills they need to be successful at the next stage, and we should value this as a job well done by the students and the school. Please don't misunderstand the struggles that kids will experience post-high school as something that necessarily needs to be fixed through these pathways. This is perhaps more of a communication issue. Over the right direction a student takes, it can best be addressed in multiple ways versus requiring additional metrics to be met. Parents also communicated this well when they were here as a collaborator. Please remember that high school students are at very widely varying levels of abilities, and it's our job as high school principals to take each student and develop them according to these abilities and the student's interests. These pathways are an opportunity to help guide some students that are not successful on the end-of-course assessment. Please remember that this opportunity should be just that, an opportunity. Trying to do too much with this, especially at this stage in our testing and with our diploma dilemma,
30 seconds.
creates obstacles for students and defeats what our hope is with this process. How do we help students be better prepared following high school? I'll wrap up with this. October is National Principals Month, and they deserve this. In all of our discussions, they've given me this feedback and more. And they've also said, Todd, let's use this opportunity to help students who need this rather than just a lot of retesting. And then they say, tell the panel to be broad in their scope right now, and we
Time.
will help determine the right solutions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Jeff Butts?
Good morning. Chairman Ernest, I was excited about the 30-minute limit, especially given that I'm not going to be here this afternoon. I know it's disappointing, but I will be back across the street, which is going to be part of my comments this morning. As I thought about what I wanted to say today, and I didn't want to continue to belabor some of the excellent points that have been made by my colleagues, and I do appreciate them being here, given that this is the second day of our annual conference across the street between School Board Association and the Indiana Association of Public School Superintendents. For those of you who don't know, my name is Jeff Butts. I'm the superintendent of the MSD of Wayne Township and also the acting president of the Indiana Association of Public School Superintendents. I go back to last week, which was College Go Week, and we had an opportunity on Friday, along with Learn More Indiana and the Higher Education Commission. Matter of fact, Jason Bierce and I were staying in the middle of the Ben Davis High School Gymnasium, watching our students go to 16 different colleges to apply and talk to them about making those applications. It was a great opportunity, and it reminded me that it's awful easy for us sitting around this table to forget about those faces that we are empowered to really make these decisions about. These students that right now are in our schools. Not all of them are juniors and seniors going on, but they are on the pathway, and they're on a pathway towards graduating high school and being successful and hopefully contributing citizens in the state of Indiana. And so I just ask you today, and as you continue this work, to remember those faces, to remember those students that we're here to serve, that we are making decisions about. And as I go back across the street this afternoon as we wrap up our conference, I couldn't have been more proud yesterday to be sitting in the convention center looking out at over 900 individuals, state superintendents and school board members who have dedicated their time, and especially our school board members that are elected officials that were there giving of their time, who continue to work to better their community, to better their school districts, to better the opportunities that they have for children, or that we have for children. And I want to thank you for doing the same, because this is hard work. And we know that the decisions made by this panel will be long-lasting and will affect many children for years to come. So I thank you for your service. I thank you for all the work that you have done and are doing, and I thank you for the opportunity to provide comment.
Thank you.
James Demerin. Oh, maybe. James Demaro, yeah.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. My name is James Demaro. I am a director of 2 manufacturing support divisions for Thor Motor Coach in Elkhart County. I wanted to talk a little bit real quick about the crossing program that Rob Staley runs. I was approached last December about having a classroom in one of my manufacturing plants, and we decided to go ahead and do that. So we actually built a high school in one of my manufacturing plants, and I have to say that it has been just an absolutely fantastic approach to taking some kids that otherwise wouldn't have a chance, allowing them to go to school half the day and actually work out in the workforce the second half of the day. You want to change the culture of a manufacturing organization, build a high school in it. It has been just an absolute blessing for us as well as the kids. So we're getting as much out of it as the kids are. And to be honest with you, you know, from a manufacturing standpoint, in the RV industry, we really struggle with finding qualified workers. And we're getting these kids, whether they go to a program like the Crossing or not. And I hope that that makes sense to everybody. This is the workforce. So we have an opportunity with programs like the Crossing, to partner with programs like the Crossing, to actually develop them with the soft skills necessary to be successful in that environment before they get to that environment. You know, we've struggled in my division alone. I have about 250 folks that work for me. In the last year, we went through 400 just to stay at 250. And a lot of what we're seeing from my standpoint and from a leadership standpoint is the folks that we're getting in just don't have the soft skills, don't have the social skills, let alone the work ethic that it takes. And these are good jobs. These are good blue-collar jobs. And, you know, as we all know, not everyone is cut up for the college program after high school. A great deal of them aren't. So this gives them an alternative by partnering with a program like the Crossing to really develop those skills. We get them into plants. They're learning good skills that they can apply, whether they stay at Thor or whether they move on into a blue-collar type atmosphere, and really giving these kids a chance to be successful. It's changed me as a person too. It really has. You know, I use the term that I'm a football coach. I love them. I love them strong. But it really has been a blessing to have this program in our plant. And it wasn't an easy decision to do that, but it has changed our culture. Our employees have taken these kids under their wings as well. And we look forward to, as they graduate, to be able to offer them jobs. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it very much.
Shannon Cooper.
Hello, I'm Shannon Cooper. I'm a guy. I get to facilitate at Thor Motor Coach. I'm the job training instructor there for the Crossing Education Center. So they built me a 2-story classroom inside of there, and I teach supply chain, manage the logistics on the floor, And the school part of itself is we get to teach skills that kids, soft skills that kids are not seeing every day in the classroom, like just good communication skills. How do you do that in a work for? How do you talk to another worker? How do you have a positive attitude? How do you have a strong work ethic? So my kids will complain about working for 3 hours and the Thor employees have been there for 8 or 9 hours. So when these kids get to see that face to face, we get to see what they're really like and how they're applying those skills. And we've had a great success rate with this. We're getting kids who don't succeed in school and they're getting credits faster now, and they look outside their window and they see that job. So over break, now we're on our break, I have students working on the floor right now and they're being paid by Thor Moto Coach. They see a future. So you want to talk about empowerment? I have kids that are calling me in the morning, and if I'm not there on time, they're like, where are you at? You're supposed to be here. And these are kids who don't talk to teachers. So, and then the parents are excited for their kids. So this whole circle, and then it's also made a positive impact on the employees who don't want to be late and they show up to work because the students are there. And it's kind of cool. Some of my students are outworking some of their students, or their workers, and they're training their workers now. And I have a student that will be able to share that with you, but I'm just going to tell you guys right now, when a kid looks out and they can see why their math skills matter, why their communication skills matter, you cannot beat that living experience. That's all I can share.
Andy from the crossing.
Hello, my name is Andy Campos, and I'm a student at the Crossing. I go to the Thor Satellite Campus. This campus has been nothing but a blessing to me. I've learned so much. I've done so much. I've acquired new skills. Communication is a big one. I honestly, if I hadn't learned that, I wouldn't be up here right now. I just learning to work with the other workers is really great. The job opportunities I get, like on my fall break I have right now, I'm able to work because I'm 18 and I have actual income right now, which is amazing. Like any other program I don't have that. Like, and being able to I have really bad attention problems. Being able to go half days and get my credits and stuff like that, and then the other half, be able to go down and work and get some of my energy out, that's really awesome. It's just good fit for me, and there's a lot of other kids that are just like me. So I've learned a lot of communication skills and soft skills, taking initiative, being able to motivate myself when I don't want to keep going, especially waking up now at 4 in the morning. That's awesome. But it's just learning new skills is going to help me in the long run because it's preparing me for the real world. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Alyssa Van Vactor.
Good morning. My name is Alyssa Van Vactor, and I'm also a representative of the Crossing, who you've heard from a couple times. My job there is to work with the students, connecting them in the business world through a job training coordinator as well as development specialist. I come from an education background. I was a teacher for several years, and then I also have a business world background, so I kind of get to see the best of the both worlds collide. So what you've heard a little bit is how we work with these businesses, and we have a work to learn program where we're placing students in the satellite model. I work here in Indianapolis connecting businesses and schools that we're working with here. And what we're finding is these students are showing up to school because they want to work, not because they want to take a test and they want to work on credits. They get excited about working, and they get excited about having that purpose and that passion. And these students are working really hard. They're learning the soft skills. They're doing financial peace. They're learning about 7 habits. They're doing all of those things, but they're struggling to pass the ECA. And so what we're finding is that we need another option for these students, and we don't want
We want them to have a challenge, so we want them to have the high school equivalency diploma. We think that's a good option, and to work on the task. But we need to find another option where these students, even through remediation, are struggling with the ECA. And these kids are working very hard on the floor half a day, every day, where they are working on the soft skills. They're getting certifications. They're graduating from high school with jobs lined up through these satellites that we're working with in these businesses. And we'd like to see them get credits towards their diploma through some of the certifications that they're getting, and for their hard work on the soft skills that they're implementing into their life and that they're showing on the floor. And we think that that should be a good option for these students, because not everybody is the same. Not all these students fit the same model, and our students aren't graduating thinking about their career. They're graduating thinking about, how can I get a job right now and find a place to live and get food on my plate? They're not thinking about what happens if I go to college and get certifications and what kind of an income I can have down the road. And so we really want to help these students focus on not working at McDonald's when they graduate, but getting out of that poverty cycle and using those skills and those soft skills and those certifications through these businesses that they're getting to help them have a better job and to break that poverty cycle that we have in here. So we'd like to see working in a creative model. If we can work together and be creative and find something unique for these students that are not our necessarily college-driven students, and see if we can come up with something for them. Thank you.
That concludes public comment.
Thank you all. Again, public comment has been great and very informative as we have worked through this process. So I would just start with, again, so pleased to have who we have around the table with us. Just start with a more general question of, and we've been talking a lot as of the last few convenings about outcomes and what the outcomes of this should look like. What should it be for the student and what should those outcomes be? And so I would just ask this question: as we look at post-secondary readiness and students being ready, what does that look like? What outcomes for those around the table should there be? And anyone feel free to jump in.
First of all, thank you for the invitation. I'm Andy Mellon, Superintendent of Greater Clark County Schools, and Wendy Dant-Chester, President and CEO of 1SI, the Economic Development and Chamber in Clark and Floyd counties, is here too. And I guess we focused for years on post-secondary acceptance in our school corporation. And that has to be fair to all students, regardless of their circumstances or their challenges. So we have 99% of our graduates the last 2 years who've been accepted to a post-secondary opportunity. And what that is defined as in our school corporation is not only a 4-year school or a 2-year school, the military, an apprenticeship program, or directly into a full-time 40-hour-per-week job. And our counselors meet with our students at least twice a year individually to track that. So we have a documentation that they've accomplished that. So if you think about that for a minute, we value all students, and not all students are necessarily designed to necessarily go to a 4-year school right away. So we have to find what's a best fit for every student. What's their best fit? And you have to combine their passions and their skills and their interests, and what is the labor market demand that's out there that could fit that. So we've done a lot of research, a lot of analysis, and we're implementing what's called the Ford Next Generation Learning Model, and that is the premise, is the design of academies that take a look at every individual student, regardless of their circumstance, looking at their passion, skills, and interests, and combining those to meet labor market demands throughout our region. And I believe that we're a model for getting this work done, and it wouldn't be possible if we didn't have 400 business partners that are helping us make those connections.
I didn't know if you wanted to follow up with that.
I probably should. I think we dance well together. My name is Wendy Dant-Chester. I'm President and CEO of One Southern Indiana. We're both the Chamber of Commerce and Economic Development Group for Clark and Floyd counties. We have 1,060 business members, anywhere from the larger manufacturers down to the small mom and pop operations. across the board, we hear the same concern. Carol, I know your members here say the same thing. Where is the pipeline of workers coming from? And we recognize that until we reach out to the schools and we start influencing that development pipeline, businesses are never going to get what they want. It's going to take more effort and action on their side as well. So we've been empowered and encouraged to partner with Greater Clark and the other school districts in our service area to work with them on ensuring that those skills and those project-based learning opportunities that the employers need are what's being translated into the schools. Whether that's through actual getting the businesses into the schools, whether it's through teacher externship programs, which has been very well received throughout our community. And we come to this with the same common idea. The best social program in the world is a good paying job. And if we can do what we need to do as a community to ensure that we can attract the good paying jobs and that we have workers to perform in those good paying jobs, then our community is going to be a better place. It's a little pie in the sky, maybe a little Pollyannish, but it's exactly what we set out to do. And if we keep that in front of us, it's easy to build these partnerships with the Dr. Mellons of our community so that we're ensuring that type of participation in the future.
Dr. Ernest, if I might too, we've talked a lot, I've heard a lot of public comment about work ethic and those soft skills. Well, one of the things that we've tried to incorporate, and I think we've been fairly successful with it, is what we call our Pride program. And it was the result of about 90 stakeholders throughout our community, representing all sectors, that came together and said, how are we going to address this soft skill issue? And so through many conversations, we developed this program in which we have partnered with the Department of Workforce Development, and it's now going to be in about 25 school systems in the state, and about 118 high schools will offer the Governor's Work Ethic Certificate. It's called now the Governor's Work Ethic Certificate. So I guess I want you to know that what we're seeing as a result of this effort is we've gone from 11,000 behavioral incidents in our school system, and we have over 10,000 students prior to the implementation of that program to under 7,500 in just the third year. And we've not lowered the rigor of our expectations, but we're doing a better job of teaching what are those expectations, positively reinforcing them. And we have 200 business partners that endorse the program in ways where they're guaranteeing interviews for kids, or if they hire them, higher starting wages, Ivy Tech, free 3 credit hour class in our area. So everyone's sort of jumping in, and I feel like we are the foundation of character in our society, K-12 education. And we can talk about all the accountability we want and all the academic skills, but if we don't produce people of strong character, our society will continue to struggle. So, and I feel that we take it as a personal responsibility in our school system that we are going to work with every student, regardless of their circumstance, to help them become really good people and good citizens. And we're teaching these skills from pre-K all the way up through grade 12, and it's making a real difference in our community. So I just wanted the panel to know that we're fully committed to that component, as well as the pathway piece, connecting our kids to labor opportunity.
So maybe a follow-up real quick, and I see both of you, but a follow-up that might help here, because clearly you all have connected and are making those partnerships, and you've got some good things going, right? And we heard in public comment, hey, schools are doing things right now, don't add to, use, and we've heard this in part of our panel meetings, right, too? So what has somewhat become the F word in some of these panels, the word flexibility. But I come back to that. What does flexibility look like so that all schools can do what in terms of what a pathway looks like? Does that make sense when I ask that?
Absolutely. Well, I would tell you, first of all, I'm fortunate to have a good school board that allows us to lead. And they're very supportive, and they're engaged with us. So, if this is a community-based total commitment, and our school board has to be there to support us fully. I've got a team here with me also that I'm very lucky to have. But in particular, when I first became superintendent, I'm in year 6. I went around to business leaders and met with them individually, and I said this was my question. what can we do for you? What can our school system do for you? And we had business leaders that said they had never been asked that question. They're used to maybe, the other way around. Hey, we need your help. But we said, what can we do? And that's where those conversations started. We started to bring people to the table. It started with 35 business leaders that came to an initial luncheon in our school system to talk about these types of issues. And then ultimately, within the first year, we were up to 90. And now with our Ford Next Generation Learning Academy implementation, we have 190 community stakeholders that are engaged in this work around our region across all sectors. So it just takes leadership, it takes a like-minded approach, it takes people open to the fact that we need to work together. Wendy, in her role that she plays, has been a tremendous advocate to help bring more and more businesses together. And I just think it's the flexibility comes from a willingness to go out and say to your community, hey, we want your help, and how can we help you? And I think you'll start to see that happening across our state.
Carol, then David, and then Rob.
Just to add to what Wendy said, and Dr. Mullen, thank you, Dr. Mullen, for being here. I actually asked for you to be here because we've spoken so much about the Pride and the Work Ethics Certificate Program almost in every single meeting that we've had so far. So I'm glad to have kind of grandfather here that created this program to talk about it. But I think that one of the most important parts is that you do have the end user involved. You have the employers there, because just like Wendy said, if a student graduates and doesn't have the skills to get a job afterwards, there's so many issues, not just for the student, but also for the community at large. We're having a lot of conversations at the state chamber on the connections between workforce and the opioid epidemic, because idle hands, the best way to keep people from having addiction issues or from surviving some of these addiction issues is to keep them busy and to keep them working. But to go back to your original question, Dr. Ernest, I think one of the important conversations that we need to have here is, we keep hearing, not every student is college ready or is college bound. And I think that is somewhat correct, but maybe we need to change the language or the verbiage a little bit, that they may not be 4-year college bound. We're ranked right now 42nd in the country in post-secondary attainment, the state of Indiana. And that includes 4-year, 2-year, and industry recognized certifications. And what we're finding from some of this data that you referenced is that the jobs are going to require something past a high school diploma. And so I think we need to be very careful, and I think when we're developing these pathways, we need to recognize that, right, some students are not going to be ready, a lot of students are not going to be ready, or it may not even be appropriate for them to go to the 4-year college pathway, but we're going to need them, employers are going to need them to have more than just a high school diploma. And so I think we need to make sure that we recognize that and develop pathways accordingly.
I have a few questions regarding the Pride program. As a panel, we've been talking about that, I think, for multiple meetings at this point, and I'm looking for specific examples of how it's implemented and so forth. So my two questions are, one, is it built on a set of standards or competencies? And two, how is it implemented? I understand it's K-12, but we never get past how to implement it in schools. And some of us talk about it should permeate the entire curriculum, but how is it done pragmatically? How do you do it?
Well, first of all, in terms of the specific competencies of persistence, respectfulness, initiative, dependability, efficiency, those were decided upon after considerable discussion with all of our community partners, and we all agreed that those were the most important competencies that we wanted our students to possess. Secondly, we said there can't be a curriculum, it has to be a culture. So if we're going to establish this culture, then we have to teach the competencies. They have to be well defined. We have a rubric that we've created that every teacher is responsible for. It's taught intentionally throughout, from the beginning of the school year in mass to the individual classrooms, positively reinforced every day. We have pride teams in every building that are run by teachers but with student input to talk about how do we positively reinforce the behaviors we're expecting. We have businesses that are coming in and endorsing this work and actually using it as a part of their training program, which has been amazing to see that happen. But it's really an ongoing day-to-day positive affirmation. So the other thing that's important to note is part of our grading process is a pride score. So every grading period, every teacher for every student, based upon that rubric that I just mentioned, they have to provide a number for a student as a pride score. And so they have to be accountable to make sure that they are accountable to every student in that regard. And what we're seeing happen there is the teachers, not only through that pride program, but through work ethic certification, when it comes time for students to earn that work ethic certificate, they require signatures from all individuals within our school environment. And so the buy-in of teachers and staff members as well as community has been exceptional. And so in a classroom, I might recognize the fact that you just don't ever give up. And I appreciate that as your teacher. And it could be as simple as, you know what, great job showing persistence. We really utilize the terminology. And we start to see it coming out with our students in classroom environments when they're describing a character in a short story. And so it's something that's just become a culture for our school corporation.
You mentioned pretty dramatic results of behavioral issues and particularly decreasing. I'm sure it's a result of many variables, but can you align that primarily to the PRIDE program that you're talking about?
I would think that the majority, the largest variable for the reduction of discipline referrals has been the program, because we were really intentional to track the data. So from the very beginning, when we saw the discipline incidents that we had, and we started tracking specifically on an annual basis, we started to see that this was making a real difference in terms of not only reduction of behavioral referrals, but let's go another direction. How about maintenance workers who at a listening session said, "Hey doc, hey, what's going on with these kids today?" And of course that was a loaded question, right? I said, "Well, what are you talking about?" He said, "They're opening doors for us everywhere we go now. Kids are opening doors for us to, in other words, they're helping us, they're showing respect, and they're opening doors." Or how about, the third grade African-American students who I walk into a room and I'm behind them watching them work together. They don't even know I'm there initially, and when they see that I'm there, they both stand up from their desks and shake my hand, look me right in the eye and shake my hand. Those are things without prompting. I mean, those are the kinds of things that our community is seeing our kids, not just in the school environment, but outside in the community, starting to exhibit those habits and behaviors. Does that help?
Rob, and then Representative Bain.
Yes, it makes me smile to sit at this table. Thank you for the opportunity. I remember in my career history, 25 years in public education, 22 years to 25 as a school administrator. And I remember right around the year 2000 where we started to watch some things happen, and the language was kind of like this. You don't have a lot of time to get out of vocational skill training because we have a lot of remediation to be done. You have to pass ISTEP, you have to pass our ECA test, and therefore we're going to kind of cut back on kids that are leaving the building. So the big elephant in the middle of the room is something like this. How do you find the time to make this happen? Because we all know that when our school grade and our performance is based on those scores, how do you make this happen? Because I can tell you that principals across the state of Indiana are very conscientious about remediation and more remediation and more remediation, because their performance grade comes right out of those test scores. So then we have this other group of people out there that are struggling, going like, that's just not my life, that's not who I am, so I may as well give up. And I remember the conversation back in 2000, how many kids are we going to start losing because they just aren't going to be able to do this, and the writing's going to be on the wall and they're going to start turning and walking away. So we decided at that point, I had this discontent in my life to say, this isn't right, there's something going on here. why don't we move out, and I'll move out and start something different that looks like we're going to capture these kids that are literally falling out by the thousands across the state of Indiana, grabbing them off the street, and let's just give them a purpose by work. So the interesting thing has been, and I've heard it several times today, and you pointed out, is that, when you put a kid's hands to work, that's called purpose. And purpose regains hope. And when you have hope in your life, big things can really happen. So we talk about a lot of skills and a lot of strategies and all this, but really what it gets down to is a kid have purpose in life, and does he regain hope? Once he gets to that level, you see kids now getting up at 4 o'clock a.m., and I check in on them because I know that they're doing this, 4 o'clock a.m. to find a ride with somebody who works in the manufacturing company to pick them up, to take them 25 minutes away during their break to work, and they come home. And why do they do that? Because they get purpose through work. And quite honestly, we have this population of people, and we serve the most troubled kids in the state, those who are coming out of prisons. We have schools and county jails. We have kids with bullet holes, and we buried 25 students in the last 14 years. That's a horrific statistic, but what we have to do is we have to stop that. We have to do something different. We have to do something unique. And when you can pull a kid in, and you can build a relationship with them, and they can build purpose through work, our students told us this. It's very simple. Look, here's the bottom line. The only reason I come to school is because I'm working. That's it. I wouldn't come here because I've done school all my life. It didn't work for me, but when you tell me that I can get a job, I can literally leave here and be assigned to a job, a non-poverty level job, and that I can make money, and that I can then start to think about the next post-secondary move. So somebody made a comment, and I think it's so relevant here. We have to make sure we understand this. There's this 4-year track that most of us jumped into right out of high school. And there's also this thing that's not called a bad thing, it's called a modified 4-year track. What's it look like for us to A, work, B, 35% of our graduates are now enrolled in Ivy Tech for that associate degree. C, then they're jumping out going, hey, I want to be a doctor. I want to be a brain surgeon. I want to do something really, really big, because all it takes is a little step to be able to gain focus in life and to gain hope. So here we go of just doing something really simple like, why don't you go to work, live pace, have a mentor from the factory level that meets you every single day at the door. They're invested in your life, and we have just had a banquet, and 2 of our mentors, one who served many years in prison, says, this kid right here that meets with me at work every day, he's changed my life. I don't know what he's done. So, and having 6 of these across Indiana, and next year we'll have probably at least a dozen of them in this model, what the manufacturing companies are doing and saying to us is, you don't understand how this has changed us and the culture of our organization, because we have employees that are choosing to get to work on time and not use drugs because they want to be a good mentor for their kid. And as we continue to gain this momentum, we now have so many requests for satellite campuses to build a model of 20 kids and 2 teachers in a building that we don't even have enough students in Indiana to be able to fulfill those requests. So I think that we have to continue to look at something really different. I really appreciate what we're doing in public school, because I know those hardships and I know how hard it is to change a culture. I'm excited that we're sitting at this table having these conversations, because, ladies and gentlemen, we're way past the point where our manufacturing people are looking at us going like, okay, I give up on the public school. They don't get it. They all want to go to college, or they don't have time. And we do have time, and we can find the time, and our public schools are doing things today that they've never done in the past because of these conversations.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First off, I'd like to congratulate Dr. Mellon on what you're doing, as well as Rob. It's great to hear some of the successes. I will tell you, and I agree also with what Carol said, from what the experts we had last week had shared with us, one of the things that 67% of all the jobs in the next 10 years are going to require some sort of post-secondary type of attainment. Last week we also heard pretty significant numbers. I think everybody talked about how important it was to have that math proficiency. So, you know, we hear a lot of people come and say, well, Algebra 1's not important. Well, that's not what we heard last week. And in terms of skills and preparing students, not just for that first job, but for the job that they will take, the second and third job, how are we going to prepare them? I guess what, and the other thing that we know is, just as both of you talked about, there's almost 100,000 job openings in Indiana right now today. And our employers are saying we don't have the skilled labor to develop it. what I would challenge all of you, because you've all been asked to come today because you have great programs and are doing some great things, is to be specific in terms of if you were us on the panel and creating grad pathways, understanding that we want to make sure we have the rigor, we want to make sure that we do have, we don't look at CTE as a remedial placement, but more an opportunity for kids to have success in life. How would you design them? So I'd really challenge you to think long and hard about how would we put together, because we talk a lot about ideas, but we would like to hear some practical things from you guys as to how you would put that together. So I would challenge you to, when you talk, share your ideas, your thoughts, as well as what you would envision.
I hate to jump in here, if I can though, but from a manufacturing point of view, we want to hear from educators, so forth and so on. So from a manufacturer's point of view, by the way, I'm already part with ArcelorMittal, way up the north end of the state, which often gets forgot about, but we won't go there.
We don't forget
So anyway, these are all great ideas. I applaud you for all those ideas and all the actions you guys are doing, but what we find is, or what I see, is we're helping a group of students down here, okay, going into a very entry-level manufacturing job. And that's awesome. I mean, every kid needs to be helped. We have this group of kids up here who are going to go to a four-year school because we know they're going to go to a four-year school. And if you listen to the conversation today, a lot of the conversation was those kids down here, not the group of kids. So I say what we are missing is the 80% that's from this group down here that you're doing a great job with. And the 10% up here, I'll go as far as 20% because that's what Harvard's study showed me. 20% going to the four-year college. Okay, it's the other 70% in there, from 10 to 80%, that we're missing, that we're not concentrating on, that's getting lost in the shuffle because we know these kids are good and we really want to help these kids. There's 70% of the kids there. That's where I draw from. So I hate the word advanced manufacturing. All manufacturing is advanced now. We're doing today with 10% of the people what we did 40 years ago. Okay, so so let's look across that spectrum. So let's look at the, right at the 11%. So the 11%, the student at the 11%, could we push him just a little harder? Because where I really need him, where he's going to get that job, because there's too many other people that are going to float to the top when I open up an entry-level job. Retired teachers, career changers, and all those. They're going to float to the top. So high school kids not even going to have a chance. So how do I get that kid that wants to go a little more than that entry level? I don't necessarily want to just, I got a job in manufacturing, pushing a broom. How do I get that job in manufacturing, where I can work my way up to running a CNC machine? Okay? I don't want to be, I want to be at that 11%, work my way up to that 79%. Then we have the 40 to 80% or somewhere in there that I'm going to a four-year college. I don't know the statistics, but how many students who go up to a four-year college finish in 4 years with the degree that they want? Okay. I talk to a lot of students, a ton of students that call me. I run a program that ArcelorMittal pays for USA-wide in the states that we have plants that helps students become a skilled maintenance technician. Okay. And it requires a two-year associate's degree. And I talk to a lot of students, 15,000 students a year I talk to just in Northwest Indiana. I'm going to a four-year college. Well, why? I want to be an engineer. Why? Can you really do it? But the bottom line is they don't. Then they're calling me 5 years later. They have $150,000, $200,000 in debt. They're working 4 jobs to try and pay off that debt. They feel like a failure. And they can't even afford to go or have the time to go to Ivy Tech now to get the 2-year associate's degree that's going to get them a $130,000 a year job in my company. Because we said, they're college, they're grown. So this is a great conversation. I'm not knocking anyone, but I'm just saying, we really have to look at this, I'm going to say 10 to 80% group. And they're getting, I haven't heard one comment about that group yet. Well, a lot of hands.
We got lots, go. Representative Benny, you gotta follow up on it, or either say that, and then we're gonna start here, we'll work our way, okay?
Two things if I can follow up. First off, I agree with you, and that's why I'm challenging us to look at career tech ed and not look at it as for the kids that need remediation, but look for the broad spectrum of kids and try to really focus. I would challenge you as well as manufacturers to think more about how you could help provide apprenticeships so that those kids can actually come experience your facility and see, that maybe I don't need a four-year degree, that I can maybe do an associate's degree. So I would challenge manufacturers to get more engaged. The last thing I would also challenge, though, let's not get bogged down with the fact that ECAs and retesting, I know Rob brought that up. This panel has been charged with determining what those pathways look like. And ECAs do not have to be a pathway. So we're not looking at a central, but we want to make sure, as a policymaker, I want to make sure that we're embedding enough rigor so that the students can be successful in a post-secondary being an associate's degree and not, have problems in that as well. So whether it's an apprenticeship or whatever type of internship, I would challenge you to, like I said, walk away from our traditional thoughts about assessments and try to figure out if you were king for a day, as Dr. Ernest likes to say, what would the model look like for you?
Thank you. My name is Janet Boyle. I serve as Executive Director of Sboe at the University of Indianapolis. And our mission at Sboe is to ensure that every Hoosier has a viable, meaningful education. Originally, our early college initiative started with a focus just on the four-year college attainment. And with early college, that means significant dual credit being attained at the high school level. 4 years ago, we had a group of CTE center directors and their teams come to one of our trainings and they said, why don't you have early college for CTE? Because we do dual credit, we do 2-year certifications, we need this done as well. So we've expanded our early college model to focus on that. To get to your point about the 70% in the middle, that's who early college is for. It's not for the high flyer. It can be, but it's for those kids that are first generation, come from poverty, perhaps a member of a minority group, perhaps English as a second language. But those are the students that need supports. They can do dual credit, but it takes supports, and those are often wrapped. Programs need to start as early as middle school in terms of providing a pathway to an early college program. But it does work throughout the state. We've had over 100 schools go through our training. We've got tiny ones. We've got many folks that are here today that have had experience with this. It does work. It just needs to be expanded. The third model we're moving toward is a polytechnic, not what the Purdue model is, but this is where a business teams up with a school district in terms of offering a sector pathway that students can achieve, but this is also going for the associate degree certifications for sure, but definitely getting students on that path. And the polytechnic model also involves work-based learning, so there could be apprenticeships, there could be shadowing, there could be all the things built in, basically from middle school on for students. So I'm happy to answer any questions about that.
If I could clarify the Polytechnic, I'm the Director of Education Workforce at Sboe. And to be a Polytechnic, there's 2 in the state that are currently, we would say, are actually doing this, and it would be Perry Central High School and Elkhart Career Center. And to be a Polytechnic, you have to have an equal business, post-secondary, and K-12 partner at the table, and you have to sit down before you identify your pathway with your employers and say, if someone's going to graduate high school and walk right into your business and be employed right away, ideally not just at the entry level, but a step above, what credential do they need when they graduate high school, and how are we going to make that happen? So what we're doing with our schools for this conversation is career and college. So it makes us a little nervous when people start to say, do we have a career pathway or a college pathway, when, like Carol was saying earlier, we know the majority of our jobs are going to require post-secondary credential. How do we do career and college? Especially even for our students that are going to college, ideally they would hopefully still have a career. And ideally they would know what a career is before they enter college, so that they'd be more likely to finish. So part of what we really like about Dr. Mellon's model as well is that it is CTE for every single student, wall to wall. But they're using that CTE for every student, whether or not they're college going, career going, 2-year college going, whatever, to increase their academic rigor in their school buildings. What we've seen around the nation is when other states are really approaching this workforce problem, they're not approaching it by saying, how do we just get someone ready for the workforce and someone ready for college, but how do we use this workforce excitement and relevance to make all of our students more likely to complete a post-secondary degree somewhere. And that's really, I think, in our hearts, like what we really are looking for, is how do you address that data problem and how do you use that relevance to get more students eager and excited to come to school, to succeed in school, and to pass those classroom experiences. So the best school districts that we're working with, they're putting their math and their English in their career center. They're doing wall-to-wall academies. They're teaching trigonometry in the precision machining classrooms. And they're asking their employers, what do you want? Like, give us real-world examples. If you're using trigonometry in your factory, tell us what that looks like. Sit down with our trig teacher and let's do a project so when our students graduate, they have problem-solving skills, they have teamwork skills, they have presentation skills. They know how to show up, they know why they need to show up, they know how a business runs, they know what their benefits are, what financial literacy is. So what we do is we go around the state and we ask manufacturers and IT companies and healthcare people, what do you actually want? And they give us the same list every single time. It's almost always students that know how to learn, students that can function, that can show up, but can do problem solving, can follow a process, can put together a flow chart, know why they need to come to business. Because that's, I think, one of the big key pieces is if I'm a student, why should I come to class? Why should I come to your business? If I'm going to show up and leave that exact same day, there's missing communication there. I don't know why I'm important, and I don't know what you're going to do for me. So that's just my 2 cents on that.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. First of all, I'd like to say that I think that it's important for all of the folks from the business side that are around the table to understand that school districts are breaking down silos between one another, regardless of the setting that we're in. Folks like to say there's competition between school districts, and maybe there is, but I would like to say that there are school districts around the state who are working together to solve these issues. Dr. Mellon, I would say Mr. Ketchum, I've talked to these guys and their teams, and we're all working together across the state school district to come up to and solve these problems. With that being said, I want to go back to, Chairman, what your comments were earlier about some specifics, and also with Representative Boehning. I want to give you a little bit of our journey in MSD of Decatur Township. First of all, what we've learned is the key component to all this work is alignment. Okay, and that is what I think is desperately missing from our school district, specifically here in Indianapolis, where if you look in the Indianapolis metro area, we have 14 school districts who are in competition to try to reach out to business partners around here to work. So there's a lot of demand from our business partners coming from lots of different places. So we had the opportunity last week with Dr. Mellon's team, Louis Cass's team, with the support of Cell to go down to visit the academies of Nashville. And that's where a lot of these models are coming out of. And with 86,000 students is what they're doing this with in Nashville. And the key component to all of it is alignment. They have their Chamber of Commerce, their state, their city chambers of commerce, their non-for-profits, all working together in service to public education. Whether it's charter, whether it's your traditional public school districts, it doesn't matter. It's in service to public education. So first of all, umbrella is alignment. 2, local context is vital. We're talking a lot about what's happening, obviously, in southern Indiana. We have some great folks who I know who are looking at the academies in Elkhart. All of those contexts are a little bit different. Well, our context here locally in Indianapolis is a little bit different. So working with one another to understand the context is vital. I'll use a different F word, but not a bad one, okay? The F word flexibility to me isn't necessarily flexibility, it's about frameworks. We need to create frameworks and not recipes to the problems. And I think it's what I've heard a lot of people talking about in here is don't necessarily dictate. Let's create frameworks to work from versus recipes. Getting to our personal work in Decatur Township, we're trying to develop a personalized learning approach for every single student in our school district. Not the bottom quartile, not the top quartile, not the middle, everybody having a personalized approach. So how do you do that, right? It's a very difficult thing to do, but our personalized approach is this. We are looking at, obviously, developing our pathways in Decatur Township, starting with the computer science pathway, K-12 student computer science pathway that we have been partnering with Next Tech and Apple on. And we are in that journey right now. But what we can tell you, how it manifests itself at the end, because we talked about what is the product we want to walk away with, right? We want students to have specific skills, but we also want students to walk away with something tangible. So here's what our idea is. Our idea is that every single student in our school district walks away with an e-portfolio. That e-portfolio contains badges or certifications in support of the diploma that it's going to be, it's in addition to the diploma that's going to be attained. But each of those badges are specific to that student, depending on what pathway they're on. Okay? And then the e-portfolio would go with that child, whether they go on to a two-year institution, any type of post-secondary opportunity they go on to, that e-portfolio goes with them. It shows writing samples, it can show you the work that they're able to do, all that is embedded within the e-portfolio. We are working with Dr. Ali Jafari, he's the director of the IU Cyber Institute here in Indianapolis. He's had a lot of success in being able to put together these types of these systems before. And so we're really excited about the potential of doing that. Now, where do the badges come from? The badges come from people who work in the industry around the table and also higher ed. So we collaborate in creating the badges with these partners, and then we certify that those students have been able to attain those badges, and those badges go along with those students. So if you're an employee, you can see what specific skills those students have when they're leaving the school district that they're graduating from. Last thing I'd like to say is I think ultimately it's about scalability as well. And I think for us in our district, it's not specifically about a computer science pathway, but it's about how to build a framework of a viable pathway that then can be replicated within our district. So whether it be teaching as a profession, whether it be restaurant hospitality, having a framework with badges and an e-portfolio as a walkaway for students, we believe is the recipe for what the state may need moving forward.
Paul Ketchum from Batesville Community School Superintendent, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. And once again, I'm very proud of our peers. We are doing great things for students in the state of Indiana. I think right now is a critical time to get it right for a lot of students. Your original question was the flexibility word. What is flexibility? Flexibility for me is the ability to cultivate or incentivize innovation, to do things that are student-centered, that are outside the norm. I'll give you a perspective of students from Batesville schools. As we've talked about manufacturers, we've talked about businesses, and we've talked about higher ed. What we have found at Batesville is that when you're 18, you might not know exactly what you want to do. You may be a full year, and with this innovation, we still want to be held to a high level of accountability. But what things such as co-ops, internships, teacher externships do is allow students to find out if that's really what they want to do. If you want to be a doctor and you do an internship at Margaret Mary Health, and you find out you don't like needles or blood, we saved you a lot of money potentially. At the same time, to your point, we're not just looking at our 10% remediation kids. We're looking at our best kids, every kid 1 through 100. And what we hear from our local businesses is we want your best kids in your co-op program. And the issue's been, well, I'm going to Notre Dame, IU, Purdue, I don't have time to be an internship. So the conversation now with Batesville Tool and Die is, we'll get you our best kids, flexibility, innovation. We'll get them there somehow, some way. And if you like them, test drive them, and you talk about tuition reimbursement. You talk about making a commitment to that student. At the same time, those students who are maybe not four-year degree, they're not even confident they've got an associate's degree, go to Batesville Tool and Die, have great work ethic, have all the soft skills Dr. Meehan was talking about. Then they get confidence to go to Ivy Tech. Once again, tuition reimbursement. So we're decreasing student loans, we're finding career pathways for students, and we're meeting the needs of all students. If I may, I'm going to pass the baton to Mr. Andy Allen, our Batesville High School principal, and let him talk a little bit about how a co-op internship program and teacher externship benefits us.
Thanks, Mr. Ketchum. Again, thank you for having me here. My name is Andy Allen. I'm principal at Batesville High School, and pleased to have Lauren Meisenberg with me as a representative of Batesville Tool and Die, and also a former or a graduate of Batesville High School, recent graduate of Batesville High School. Representative Benning, you asked about specifics on pathway, and so for us, in reality, Algebra 2 becomes the barrier. As you heard a lot about diploma attainment, a kid that sits in our 178 seniors right now when they graduate, they're either going to be on an academic honors diploma, a technical honors diploma, a core 40, or a general diploma. Those are their options. And so when you ask about outcomes, the outcome is a diploma. That's what we want them to get. That's our charge when they come in, and then all the other skills that go with it. But as you come in as a pathway and you say to get to the core 40, which becomes the minimum or the level that we're all walking in on, that means I've got to get them through Algebra 2 by the time they're senior year. If they struggle with Algebra 1, and it takes them 2 years to get through that, it is almost impossible to get them through Algebra 2 as a senior year. So from my standpoint, and asking and talking with my colleagues as far as how we can incentivize a lot of different opportunities, including co-op models, is what becomes the substitute for Algebra 2. Again, we're not talking a creation of a second math course. We're not talking about adding more. As the substitute for that, for the skills that all of you have talked about today, is getting people within places like Batesville Tool and Die, to get them into manufacturing companies, to get them into exposures to whatever different industry and go well beyond manufacturing. Get them out of our building during the day and get them in those opportunities. So please allow me a couple of examples here at Batesville High School. This would apply out to our academic honors diploma, our technical honors diploma, our core 40 kids, and our general diploma kids. But our charge is to free up time during the day to have them walk out of the building and go into these opportunities. We're blessed in southeastern Indiana with a lot of big companies that are welcoming in the community. We recognize that. But it's also the experiences at some of the mom and pop shops that we have that are willing to take on kids anywhere from 2 hours a week to 6 hours a week through career exploration internship opportunities that are supervised by a certified teacher, by one of our business teachers with a background as a CPA and also in the math group. So, for example, as a kid gets into the junior and the senior year, we're starting to look at what are your career interests as they meet with the counselors. What are you looking to do? 4-year, 2-year, military, go right into appointment, whatever it is, what are your interest levels? Then can we find at least one block during the day? We're on a block schedule system. So can we find 2 hours during the week for you to leave Batesville High School and go to some of these opportunities? You heard Caleb Pearson speak about a month and a half ago, those of you who were here, through the Batesville model, as he was taking 3 classes at Batesville High School, 2 classes at Ivy Tech, and spent 6 hours at Batesville Tool and Die, Hillenbrand Industries, and Heartwood Manufacturing, learning technical trades. Caleb is a product of 2 4-year graduate parents. And you talk about a real barrier is convincing two parents, one is a teacher in our school system, one of our best teachers, and another who's a nurse, to say, oh, by the way, I'm probably not going to go on a 4-year track. I'm going to go into this co-op program, and I want to be a part of it. The real sell is the parent, not the kid. And so I think those are conversations that we have to have, we are having at the high school level, to get these experiences so that people like Lauren can test drive, can interview Caleb, and not only Caleb, but other kids through the years to see if that's an employee that they want. And so when we talk about sifting through and a high school kid can't get through, if I've already interviewed that kid for 2 years in an internship opportunity, I don't have to worry about the other ones because I know who I have or who I don't have. And so we've created that model not only for the 6-hour standpoint a week, but also the 2-hour standpoint a week that hits all kids. We'll talk a lot about iLearn and ECAs and all of that stuff. And again, we're not shying away from any of that. If we're going to do iLearn, we'll do that. But when you talk about diploma attainment, flexibility, and I really like, Nate, your term framework of it, we need to work around for the Algebra 2 model. That is the #1 barrier for us. And so I go to our diploma check sheet that we have for the academic honors kids, where we have basically seven options. And for us, it's only 6 because we take IB out. We're not an IB school, so we've already crossed that one off. How does that translate to a general diploma model? I know we're not supposed to say general diploma model, but a diploma option that says when a kid graduates, they've done X, Y, and Z. And it may even be 1, 2, and 3 as well. And as Dr. Best talked about with stackable credits, do they take personal financial responsibility as a junior and as a senior in some type of online model? Do they take personal college and career readiness opportunities, maybe in an online model? And there's a repeat follow-up to it. We're already doing that with personal financial responsibility. Kids have to meet the 26 hours or the guidelines of it, and we have a model to work through of it, and all schools do, whether you actually take the class or whether you meet criteria taking these courseworks. That framework, that flexibility can be added to the new diploma models. Let us figure out how it meets the consumer need. We are heavy in manufacturing and healthcare. We've got great partners with Margaret Mary Health and all of our manufacturing partners. Don't leave them out of the table, but we're different than a lot of other people. And so as you go into the Indianapolis area and the computer science, we're trying to break into that part of it too, but we don't have necessarily net tech in our area. You do. Let Nate and people in Decatur County come up with that. Let the folks in Floyd County come up with their niche, but give us that workaround where kids are demonstrating, whether e-portfolio or through checks and stuff, that they've done that and they've met the requirement without necessarily getting through output.
I was just going to comment on both of your comments. First off, Algebra 2 skills, I'm not saying that they have to take a traditional Algebra 2. I think we need to be, that's why I want you to be more creative in terms of your ideas. I understand that not all kids learn the same way, and that, you know, you sitting in a desk and figuring and developing the formulas and all that will not be best for every student. Actually, applying it is much better in a lot of kids, and that's why. So how can we embed that rigor? And I do agree with you. I like what Data said in terms of framework and recipes. And I keep mentioning the Swiss model, but the Swiss model in their apprenticeships embeds what they want in terms of rigor and competencies in any one of their apprenticeships. So you know that you're going to get that Algebra 2 component, and they have to demonstrate that in competencies at the end. So, and it will be an applied model, not necessarily an ECA. And so I don't want to dwell at all on the ECA. Sure. Let's move on and figure out what would that look like. So, you know, I think we need to continue. I appreciate what I know Batesville has got some great programs. You guys, your students have. I've heard from them a number of times we visited, and I think you're doing great work. And I do believe, too, I agree with you totally, that what's true in Indianapolis is going to be true in Batesville. So as we create these, I guess I would envision the framework to be able to be embedded in something that's locally created. Senator Cruz mentioned, I don't know if he publicly mentioned this, but he mentioned it to me. He comes from Northeast Indiana, and they have lakes up there, and because of that, they have a lot of boat owners, and one of the critical problems they had in the community up there was they didn't have mechanics to service those boat owners. So they worked with the industry. I don't know if Evan Root's still there. Maybe Evan Root. I know Merck Cruise or some of those big manufacturers to develop a curriculum where these kids could get certified. And I mean, they walk out of the door, they're making great money, and they have. They've been able to demonstrate the competencies. So those are the kind of things that would be locally created and not necessarily created at the state level. But I think what we need to do as policymakers is you help us to develop that framework so that we can make sure that we are graduating kids that have the competencies to be successful.
When you talk about frameworks and systems and models, everything that my colleagues have talked about, outstanding work that's going on. Through the four next generation learning model of academies, what we've done is we've identified 4 major academies, 4 pathways in each academy, all designed to meet labor market demand throughout our region. We're part of the Metro Louisville region. So not just Southern Indiana, but Metro Louisville. So we did a lot of research to connect to what are those demands that are needed. So just without going into huge detail, but the idea would be that every student, starting next year, we have a freshman academy that all freshmen go into. They have a full year course called a freshman seminar course that they take that helps to introduce them to all the opportunities and possibilities, exposes them to what's out there within our region. By the end of their freshman year, they will be inducted into an academy. The 4 academies are business and entrepreneurship, advanced manufacturing and engineering, business and entrepreneurship, advanced manufacturing and engineering, public service, and health service. So those are the academies. And once they get in there, their courses, they have to take all the courses that you have to take to graduate, but any other courses that are elective in nature that can be tied directly to their interest, then they take those as well. So we're designing pathways, maps, that will show each student, once they're going down that pathway, exactly what courses they'll take, what industry certifications they can earn, ultimately, it all leads, hopefully, to a work ethic certification as well. Dual credit opportunities. We offer associate degrees within our district. We'll probably have over 30 of them next year, or this school year would be mine. So you talk about rigor. The rigors are built into all the academies. You talk about engagement. We're training all of our teachers in project-based learning. So that's transforming teaching and learning. We have the academy concept, which is the transforming how the schools are even set up, and we're transforming business and civic engagement because we're bringing all these partners in to actually work on those workplace learning experiences that kids need to have before they graduate. And what's great is it's all driven by what's ended up being 190 people in our community and those backbone kids that I refer to that middle group of kids as backbones. Majority of people in our society, I believe, are backbone people. They're strong, they're solid, they don't get tremendous accolades for being the superstars, and they don't draw everyone else's negative attention because they can't get out of their own way. So the academy concept does meet the needs of all of your backbone learners because it does individualize learning for every student. It puts them along a path. If I complete a pathway, any of these pathways, I have earned dual credits, perhaps associate degrees, if that's my path. If I want to be a doctor, a lawyer, go that professional route, absolutely. If I want to go directly into manufacturing, you're connected there, industry level certifications, workplace learning experiences. You wanted to know what an answer is. I've been in this business for 35 years. I've not seen anything like this in my life. And the fact that we are all in our school system, and I'm talking about our community partners, I believe that it's a model that can be implemented throughout the whole state of Indiana, and all these great ideas, it's happening to some level or extent in a lot of other school systems. So the academy concept, to me, is the perfect framework that we need to pursue, because everything we just talked about can fit underneath that academy model, including graduation pathways to make sure when kids do graduate, it's not all about passing a particular test or a particular course. It's about, did we do what we should have done by connecting to our business partners so our kids are ready. They're ready to participate in a quality, improve the quality of our community.
In terms of both Nate and all your programs, my question for you is how permeable are those? Because obviously, as a freshman, I may say I want to be health science, and then I get into health science, and I'm like, this isn't what I want to do. So how permeable are your models, and can they move in and out?
So one thing I would say that it's vital within those frameworks is that you create on and off ramps for students. Okay, and so part of building that out, Representative Bainey, is looking at, okay, if a student's heading this road, all of a sudden there's a little bit of shift of the mind. You have on and off ramps for those students. Doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be going to a 4-year institution. Maybe it's a 2-year institution and they're working in industry as an apprentice. And so what we're trying to do in Decatur Township is figure out what those on and off ramps look like for students so that they're not too far down the path and all of a sudden there's not options for them. The key to all of this in personalizing education and personalized learning is options, and providing those options to students. So we want to provide those on and off ramps, whatever the pathway may be, within any type of academy for those students.
Well, and as Andy said, if they're embedding the basic framework or the basic competencies, they should be able to move because they should have that knowledge.
Well, and the great thing about that academy concept is that as a student make a decision that I want to go into IT as my sophomore year, IT is what I want, and they get some experiences and they decide, wait a minute, that's not what I want. They can transition into another pathway that also has high labor market demand. See, so we're not just letting kids move to something else where they're going to go down a path that won't lead to a high wage, high demand job. If they want to move from here to there, they certainly can. It's another great avenue for them to pursue.
Somewhat of a summative statement, but if we look at kind of industry agnostic pathway and even student band pathway, who's at the 10% and top 10%, for a student to be ready, what I hear is we need to provide a framework of experiences, a continuum, so that every student has a well-informed, actionable post-secondary plan. Some of those, they may end up graduating with some credentials. Some of them, it may be, literally, I've got all my applications into 4-year, and I know exactly what I'm going to do. but it helps to mitigate those, let's say that top 10% that is going to four-year, like many of us that had no idea what they were doing. Why shouldn't that student have the exact same opportunity to be well-informed through career awareness, preparation, exploration? So I think that's one thing. The other is, so basic competencies, or thinking about what every employer demands, are that core set of work skills. So problem solving, critical thinking, the cognitive flexibility, because students are going to want to on and off, not just in high school, but as adults in any career. So I think if we can arm high school students with, again, that well-informed post-secondary plan, as well as the adaptability and the problem solving skills, that will set them up for success, whether they go employment, enrollment, or enlistment.
Something else I've been thinking about when we've been talking about certifications and the flexibility and being able to offer a variety of opportunities, particularly work-based learning, is that there's also another obstacle that we often run into, and that is teacher licensing, and being able to have enough flexibility in the folks that you have available within your district who are highly qualified and that are working with outside agencies, that they are able to carry out some of the work that needs to be done with the students, like facilitating work-based learning opportunities without having to have specific licensure to do so. Or if we want to try to hire someone from the business industry to be able to facilitate our computer science coursework, that we don't have to go through a zillion steps to be able to get them certified to be able to operate within the K-12 environment when it is their field of expertise, and they know exactly what they need from the students within our schools. The other part of what I wanted to make a point of as well is that the things that we have as opportunities for the students now that provide them with wonderful experiences in CTE. There are a lot of hoops that we have to jump through and plan way ahead to be able to think, okay, if I'm going to get to this point over here, then I've got to do this and this and this and this and this and this and this to be a completer, to be able to get some additional funding, to be able to then allow us to be able to create more programming, to be able to have more experiences for our students. So all the things that have been said, academy models, everything is totally awesome. And we are doing some really great things in MSD of Decatur Township, but there are a lot of things that are in our way, even to provide the opportunities that exist now, let alone the multitude of things that we're talking about that are totally fantastic that we could provide for students as options and multiple pathways for them to be able to get a diploma.
One thing I hear from everybody, I think we got to change part of this. It's the college or not college. It's a battle against each other, white collar, blue collar, whatever you want to call it. In reality, you say there's a lot of people that aren't ready for college. There's a lot of white collar people, college people that aren't ready for technical skills. It goes both ways. And when you look at it, we've been playing one against each other. You can see the advertising on TV for all the colleges now. But in the hierarchy of an economy, manufacturing is the base. Like you said, there's 20% possibly going to college. If everybody's going to college and we have 80% of the high school graduates as college graduates, who's going to support them? These are all service organizations. They're not bringing any money from around the world in. So these 80% below the college, we can't look at them as another society and something different. We're all the same. I started out as blue collar. Call me white collar, I don't know. I don't care what I am. But we have to look at the diversity there and support it. Another F word, since you brought it up, that I just heard, that when I've been down and talking to governments in different areas or school systems, funding, everybody fights for the dollar. And from a manufacturer that pays taxes and an individual pays taxes, don't care. It's our dollars. I mean, we're paying them out. So we should have some say where they're going. Somebody made a comment, not here, but in another meeting. Why can't the people that are hiring the skills decide where the money goes? Instead of saying, we're going to send this to school X and school Y, and you make the programs for manufacturing. Why don't you allocate money for businesses where we can say, this is a school that's providing us what we need. We're going to pay them. Plus, we pay our money ourselves. I'm paying for schools to come in and teach people right now because I can't get what I want in Northeast Indiana. The school systems are fighting with each other. And the same thing when you said with accreditation, we can't get somebody that knows how to teach floors, industrial maintenance, skilled trades. The average people on the floor, fine. You can hire them from high school, they can do the work. Automation is replacing people. Yes, that is a good thing. Now, our people on the floor were only making $20 an hour. Sorry. Our maintenance people are making $35. If I can get the people off the floor making $20 an hour, train them and make them $35, they have a transferable skill, number one. Big thing. Maintenance people right now can go anywhere in the country and take their job, wherever they want. But we can't get them educated because there's nobody in the schools that are offering the skills that are needed. And so there's a lot of things we can do. I've heard a lot of good stories, but in reality, we're not getting anywhere quickly. I'm unfortunately working for a company that grows between 18 and 25% a year. We figure we're going to double in the next 5 years. I got 500,000 square feet and 1,100 employees. Where am I going to get this? The 500,000 square feet is not a problem. There's Ohio, there's other counties, there's Michigan. We have a facility in Ireland. We're getting ready to double that. I could go somewhere else. But Northeast Indiana is our home. We want to support it, but we can't the way it's going. And so we've got to get something here.
So to your end with what you just said, because what I heard you said is, we're talking about this, but we need a solution, right? So, could we, I want to shift, not really shift, but I want to dig in, if we could please, a little bit with this now. What would, because we've heard from different school corporations here now, all doing it a little bit different, which is great, how I believe it should be done, right? I'm Patrick Henry to the core. It ought to have some local economy to it, and that local context, as was said, right? So, could we dig into, what does that framework, because I like this too, right? What is a framework that we could have as a pathway as we work through this? And I really want us to dig in here with this. What would that framework look like to those sitting around the table, business as well? Because what you said was, clearly not getting done for you. You're talking to 15,000 students a year, and you need something, right? And so we need to figure out what that looks like. What does a framework look like that could work at all of these places? And then could one request that I've had via text was, would somebody please give a short, so let's do this first, and then we'll get into this, but for some at the table, would somebody give a short definition of academies?
I think I can do that. Academies connect students, skills, interests, and passions to meet labor market demand.
Thank you. David?
I'm going to put forth a framework just to get your opinion on it. I think we need to dig down deep, and some of the comments today I think have flushed out a framework for me. So I say a framework consisting of two parts. The first part are core skills. The second part is academies. And so in that first part, the core skills, there's two parts to that. One is what people call soft skills. I'll call them essential personal skills. For lack of a better term. But those are the soft skills that we've talked about, persistence and so forth. No one has argued against those in several meetings. So that's the first part of core skills. The second part of core skills are things like problem solving, critical thinking, mathematic competencies. And so the core skills, no matter which academy track you're going in, that everyone would get those particular core skills. so that if a student's transferring among the various academies, they have a set of core skills that they can transfer with them. And so I think that's really important. And so that's the first part. Second part are academies. And so then you get into manufacturing, health, and so forth and so on. And I'm not sure I understand academies totally, but then I would defer to others around the table who would have a set of maybe competencies, guidelines on how those would all work with internships and so forth and so on. So that's the framework I'm proposing. Again, one, core skills, two parts, and then a set of academies. What do you think about that? Would that work for all of you? And if not, why wouldn't it work?
Okay. I like the core skills aspect. I think that makes very good sense. I would probably pop the problem solving, those things up into that other little chunk that you talked about, the personal skills, but professional or whatever you want. But again, math, English, communication skills, I think it's silly to keep that there. Not sure I like the term academies because I think there's other models out here. But what I'd like to suggest as an outcome is every student graduates with a credential. And so what is that credential? Is it an industry certification? Is it 15 hours of dual credit? Is it statewide general core? Is it an associate's degree, et cetera? A credential should hit almost every kid that's going through in terms of something they achieve. Now, built under that credential, I'd like to see be it the work ethic or I'd also like to see a work-based learning continuum of experiences for kids. Basically, I can go down to elementary in my thoughts on that one, but I would also say it includes post-secondary awareness as well as work-based learning experiences. So I have a lot of dreams.
Yeah, that's great. So that exploratory part would be under core skills, right? And to do that early on, so that students get a full array of what's available.
And I find
that
that exploratory is super important. Right. And I say, these kids that I talked to, it's all about awareness. You ask a kid what they're going to be, a doctor, a lawyer, a vet, a rapper, or a dancer. You never hear maintenance technician. You never hear pipe fitter. It's all about the awareness.
One thing I will tell you, the interesting thing when we've been looking at the Swiss model, and I don't know if I shared this in this group, but they have taken the exploratory skills down to middle school level. And they're not using counselors, they're using career coaches. They've actually gone to a model, and I know several of my colleagues have, I think this might be a thing that we should look at. Instead of having a counselor in the school, because counselors are usually required to deal with social, emotional, and other issues, they actually have gone to regional-based career coaches. And they work not just with the students, but they also work with parents, which kind of deals with the issue that Andy's bringing up about. So they know a lot more. They're more engaged in knowing what jobs are open in the community, and so they do a much better job of trying to do that exploratory work at an earlier age. So you're not waiting until they're further down the line where they don't have the option to have that change. It's kind of a neat model. I thought would be interesting.
Yep, you
go. I'm going to get down to very little definition as well in terms of, layer one, just calling it that work-based learning continuum. So having, starting with career awareness, then you get into your career exploration programs, then your career preparation programs. And it's really all about connecting to industry. And I agree also starting before high school, you think of in Central Indiana with Job Spark. The whole idea is to be able to introduce 7th, 8th grade students to an awareness of what are the opportunities. So that is consistent on one, if you will, the framework. The second is, again, the bucket is always controversial, but college and career readiness. So what are we doing to call it life readiness? So what are those basic core skills that you're going to need regardless of the career that you go into? And that's everything from workplace readiness, communication, critical thinking, all of that. And then the third band is when you start to get into what is the specific technical, for lack of an air quotes, curriculum. So industry-specific curriculum that you're doing to be able to start to either get a industry-recognized credential or some type of post-secondary. And if you look at those are kind of the three bands that we think about, and together you're getting students to get our mantra, that post-secondary plan that's very well informed and ideally started before they graduate.
We're just going to add on to the conversation about the academies model. I think that the framework of an academy's model is a fabulous way to be able to pull off everything that you just said. But one of the things that I learned in our Academies of Nashville visit, and I think that they do things very well there, is that unless you have a structure and an alignment and a framework that pulls together the business and industry and community entities in support of the schools, in complete support of the schools, it really can't function. I mean, you don't have the opportunities then to make that framework work.
Do you mind if I just add? That's a great comment, because the key for us has been all the work we did to bring businesses on board, because a lot of businesses, they needed something, they needed help, but they didn't know how to do it. I think my colleagues would agree is that businesses want that help, they want that support, they want that connection, but no one in their industry had that ability to even bring them together as that collaborative aligner or convener. And I think one of the things that we've learned here, my colleagues here, is that, let's let education lead this. See, I've just made a decision, we're going to lead this, that we're going to be the foundation of this in our community. So we went out and we started to talk to business leaders, just like my colleagues, and pretty soon they start coming on board, and then they talk to one another, and it's not as difficult as you think it is. It can happen. They want that help and support, but you need to have someone that takes the lead to bring it together. And I think it can happen.
Thanks, Dr. Ernest. Ken Folks, Chief of Government Affairs for the Indiana Department of Education. Second time I've had the opportunity to sit in for Dr. McCormick, and I've attended all 6 of these, and I love all these recurring themes. Like Andy, 36 years education, ended my career as a superintendent, but I just want to comment on some of the things that I continue to hear which are recurring. The biggest thing is you're all talking about right now is that experiential learning and partnering with employers, like you're talking about, Chris, and I think Representative Boehning commented on this earlier, about getting our kids at an early age in to see what these opportunities are. It's so important. Janet mentioned that as well. And also don't forget the parent education piece. We need to educate parents. And I don't know if that's really part of that framework, but it's that knowledge of educating the parents. We've talked about this before too. Counselors. Andy, I think it's cool that your counselors meet twice. Don't you wish you had enough counselors to meet 3, 4, 5 to meet? But the counselors along the way at an early age, counseling, meeting with parents, these are the opportunities, getting you into business. Because Representative Boehning, we were in a meeting, the Senate Education hearing last Thursday, and we're hearing stories about teacher candidates in their senior year of college. Just finally got time in schools and figured out, I don't want to be a teacher, okay? All right, so we've got to make sure that early on, and there's what that flexibility comes into. And so I know I've rambled a lot, but I think when we look at this framework, we need to look at these important things that we've talked about over these past 6 meetings that are really critical to making sure when kids leave high school, they have those skills, they have that direction, and they have the flexibility that if they need to change at a certain time, they can change. And I've mentioned this in an earlier meeting as well. Retired Superintendent, East Allen County Schools, East Allen University, early college, high school, changing lives, getting kids leaving high school with an associate's degree. This year, East Allen County Schools has started a CTE early college program. So you start in the early college program, and then you decide, am I headed towards more of the college readiness, or am I more towards the career readiness? So, and the last thing I want to say is that theme I've heard a lot, this personalized, individualized education. Let's not lose track of that. If we're developing a framework, let's make sure that it's contoured, personalized, and individualized for the needs of that student.
So thank you, and given what you just said, let me real quick before, and I've got a comment ready on my left here, and then we'll move around, but I want to make sure I've captured this, because this is really good. I think we're now getting to where we're coming up with a framework here. So I've heard number 1, the core skills, 2 parts, soft skills, problem solving, critical thinking, and that, however you want to flip those around, right? Then to either academies or every student graduates with a credential, something to that effect in there. And again, I think that could be flexible. In my world, I have been putting down 6 areas that I call majors, if you will. Business and information systems, health systems is the second one, engineering and technologies, human and public services, natural and agricultural sciences, and then arts and humanities as the 6th one. So I think that can be fleshed out clearly. 3 was a work-based learning continuum. 4 was some exploratory with either career coaches going down to elementary, middle school, however that looks. And I made the parent education piece a part of this because I agree with you. I think that's very, very important. Parent education and then a business and industry partner as a requirement. And Chris, I just wanted to follow up with you. That's what you would suggest, given what you said, that a framework would have a requirement of having a business and industry partner. Yes?
In order to be able to provide the opportunities we're talking
Agreed.
about, yes.
Okay, just want to make sure that I heard that correctly. Now, you've been waiting to comment, and then I would say, anybody that what have we left out of that now? I'm trying to get somewhere now, right? So what have we left out?
Well, I have 2 points. The first one is something we've left out, and I love the academy model. I think it's wondrous, but we have small rural districts across Indiana. They can't do a bunch of academies unless they network among themselves. So they would need to look more at the credentials, I think. So you need flexibility in terms of that. But that's a crew we've got to look at because what is that? 70% of our school districts. So we have to keep those folks in mind as well as we go through this. I want to come back to something Dr. Mellon said about the going out and meeting the business people and helping that discussion come along. One of the things I'm very proud of that Shannon helps lead across the state is something called our Education Workforce Innovation Network, where they are the facilitators that help school districts, higher ed, and business folks talk to each other. Everybody has a different language. Education's got their acronyms, businesses have their language. Folks don't always even know how to start in talking to each other. But they put together our ELA team a great process to help folks move through that to get some of these arrangements set up. And I don't know, should we add to that? Or?
Yeah, I think one of the points that we keep coming back to, and one of the things we emphasize the most, is that we've started to use Greater Clark County's portrait of a graduate. Like, what is the portrait of a graduate? What are you trying to create? And you can't get that definition unless you talk to your employers or talk to your local post-secondary institutions. So generally what we do before you start to design something like the academies or your pathways or your credential is figure out, sit down with your employers, regardless of what your biggest sector is or if you're doing multiple sectors, and ask them what they need. And one of the biggest frustrations I think we've seen across the state is when employers say this is exactly what we need, like there's 25 manufacturers in the room, we're all going to support this, and then they come back and say, well, we have to get that approved by someone. That's not the State Department of Education CTE pathway. We can't do that. So for example, we've had manufacturers that want to start backing things down into the middle school, and they're like, well, we need approval. Well, we've been asking for approval for 3 years. We've had people like come together and say, we really want an energy pathway because that's big up here. It might not be big in Indianapolis, but it might be big in Northwest Indiana. How do we get that approved faster? I just asked Bruce, we were sitting here, and I said, do your employees need Algebra 2? And he said no, but they definitely need trigonometry, which is what we're starting to hear all over the state. But there's some areas where they're saying we don't need trigonometry, we need more basic math skills. So it's just different everywhere, and I think that's one of the biggest frustration points, is if a local group of employers comes to the table and says this is exactly what we need, but then it's not approved. So when you start talking about flexibility, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Do we have flexibility with how these pathways work, and what's called a workforce ready pathway? I also think we really need to keep in mind that there's two different types, not two different types, but there's many different types of educational leaders. So in some areas of our state, we have educators like Dr. Mellon, who came out running and is probably one of the greatest superintendents in the nation right now, who is really, really capable of taking this on and really responding to their businesses. Then we have other parts of the state where our employers are really the ones coming to the table leading this program. So how do we create a framework that works and allows innovation for some of these districts around the table that want to do things better and go above and beyond, but also creates a framework for those districts that might be more likely to follow and just say, well, let's just do the basics. How do we create a framework that works for both of those districts? It allows innovation, but also makes sure that some of our areas still have workforce-ready people.
Shannon, if I could have a follow-up, and then Stephanie come to you on that, because you said something that we've brought up in these first 5 meetings prior to the 6th one as well, and it's really been on my mind. How do we, because one of the things, and I've tried to remain very agnostic, so I'm going to go off my agnostic thought on this and give my opinion now, because I really need an answer from you and those around the table on this. How do we have a framework like this? Because what you just said, we want to do this, but now we've got to go get approval somewhere from someone. Who is that, right? Well, I believe that one of the beautiful parts of having these pathways, and please to my legislatures, rein me in if I'm wrong on this, is that we need to create pathways that do just what you said, so that we don't have to have this every moment of everyday approval that never seems to get done, right? So, how do we in this framework, and now we've got 6 pieces to it at this point, how do we get to the outcomes, or to the piece of how do we know that every school's doing it to the level of those that we have around the table? Does that make sense? So that we can eliminate that minutia of every single thing getting approved, because if someone wants to come over here and form a partnership with you, it ought to just happen, right? If I've got all these things in the framework. So hopefully I'm making sense with this, but how do we have a framework that if I'm doing these parts to this, and please, I'm not suggesting like a checklist kind of thing, I'm suggesting if we have the parts to this, how do we get there to where we know we have that quality control for all schools? Because you just said it, all schools don't have a leader that's going to take this on and do it to the level that we've said, and every kid, these and those kids deserve to have this, right? So how do we get to that point? If anybody wants to jump in on this, Shannon, you spurred the thought.
Why do you need that? If the employers are at the table, aren't they the measure of whether it's successful?
Thank you.
I think some of the model, if I can argue just a minute, and I think Janet had a great point, that having an industry-based credential validates that they have mastered the competency. And I also would also say that, I understand, and I think these are things that have to be fleshed out long term, but yeah, one manufacturer may want trigonometry, McDonald's may want basic math, so we're going to go ahead and just say, well, we're going to give them basic math because that's what their first job's going to be. I think we've got to think and prepare them for the first job and beyond. And so I think you're going to have some of that embedded in the thing, but I do believe that credentialing, and industry-based credentialing, so the state's not coming in and saying these are, as long as the rigor is embedded in that credentialing, you can demonstrate those things. Very popular.
I'll just say, if you look at, the model's not perfect, but if you look at how New York went about the PTEC model, which was started by IBM and New York Public Schools, what they do is you don't necessarily have to follow. They give you their pathways, their process, and the basic framework. You have to follow that unless you can bring employers in your post-secondary to the table and work with them and make changes within that. But the thing is, at the end of that, you either get an industry credential or an associate's degree. So there's still some kind of an outcome. But if your employers in your post-secondary sign off every year and say that this little tweak would be okay, then you can do that tweak and it just gets approved every year and it's a faster process.
I keep hearing all the different, how do you supply what industry needs. You mentioned the Swiss version, the German version is the same way with their certifications. Most of the schools in Indiana that I talked to, the technical schools, they offer NIM certification, which is great for local businesses. It's not good for attracting international business. So with the German standard, there's 330 some degrees or not certificates that you can graduate with from that, and those are valid across the business. We're not looking for a complete somebody to walk in and ready to work right now. We need a background to build the basic skills, and that's where I see the German standard. Berkeley County, South Carolina, Charleston area. I keep using that as an example. Boeing was coming in and they promised them a workforce. They didn't supply the workforce. Boeing was ready to move out. They created Berkeley Middle College. It's a technical school that kids go through for half a day, and they transport them there, which in Allen County, that's a big problem I hear. We can't transport. But they've got the skill set. That brought BMW, that brought ZF, that brought Volvo into Berkeley County, South Carolina. And that's attracting people from all over the country there. So we need basic uniform skills, let's put it that way. Uniform skills for each different area that are transferable.
I understand, Representative Banning, what you're talking about in terms of you don't want to necessarily just leave the basic skills at the basic skills level without being able to exit somebody with marketable skills that they can go into a higher level position in. But when it comes to a lot of the businesses and industries today that obviously they need workers very badly, but they also have a lot of change that's taking place within their business and industry, and from one year to the next, the needs of those employees could very well change, and they will be training within their own facility. So having a basis of a skill set and being able to then train on that, like Sboe does within the Purdue College of Technology within Sboe. I mean, those kinds of things to be able to add to it within the business would allow more flexibility for people exiting high school, because then you would have a variety of different opportunities to be able to go into versus having doors closed because you don't have a base skill set.
But those are expensive. I mean, for the companies and for the employers to start training, I mean, they're going to do it anyway based on their individual needs that they want. But I think what Representative Banning is saying is that we need to have a basis, but not necessarily basic. We need to have more than that, because what employers are finding is that the workers that are coming in aren't skilled enough. And so they're taking their time and money and having to do
It's
that.
a little bit of both. It's a little bit of both. We've gotten to the point where we have to take what we can get. And we spend a ton of money getting them where we need them, because we get what we get. Okay, that's why we have programs like Steelworker for the Future. Subaru has the AIM program. Toyota has the AMT program, because we get what we get. To your point, I promise you, if you're in manufacturing, you will learn something new. You will spend a week in class every stinking year, because it changes. Oh, look, technology, it changes daily. So we have the word skill upable, right? You have to be able to skill up every year. And I don't want to tie that with the grant that's out there, but, so learning, the article, the homework we were supposed to read. Yep. Learning to learn. That is so stinking important. And it ties into all this, and I'm not saying I want that to be the focus, but, there's a little bit of,
It's important on both sides. See, I think what's vital is the conversation between educators, post-secondary educators, so K-12 post-secondary, and our business and other nonprofit communities. I mean, that's the other part of it. There are jobs available in the nonprofit sector too. So if we have the conversations, what is it that you need from us in education? We'll develop the different pathways that are needed that are more specific, with those frameworks that are specific to our areas. And then, what is the level of rigor that's required inside of each of those pathways? Specifically, it comes down to math almost every time. What is the level of math that is truly needed to be successful in that pathway? Well, if we go to our partners in our area and say, well, in this pathway, what kind of math skills are you needing? Then that will help guide us as educators to provide that level, get them to that level of math. And so it's the conversations, and how do you make it happen? Well, this panel is a starting point, because this is a graduation pathway panel. You're looking to perhaps introduce legislation, That legislation, once we're educators, like most people, are very compliant people. So once you say this is what we're going to do, if you say this is what we're going to do, these are the kinds of pathways with the frameworks, the criteria that you've helped to establish, let's do it. Let's get it going and legislate it. And I bet superintendents around this state, they're ready to do whatever it takes to help their kids be successful. It's happening all over the place. Let us have a little say in that direction, because there's a lot of great things happening. Let's go. Let's get it done. But let's be tied to our business community so our kids can find their path that's appropriate for them, that can lead to advanced education if they choose it. The companies, if they want to invest in these kids, the companies can help to give college tuition assistance so we don't go tens of thousands of dollars in debt for each individual family. Let's be smarter. And yes, we have to educate parents, but let's legislate it, let's do it right, let's give the flexibility. The IDOE, the freshman seminar class, is a full-year course. They gave us a waiver to do that. I mean, teacher certification within our academies, we're finding out, we're going to have some teachers, we're going to need to get a little bit of help for it in order to teach certain courses. Well, I'm counting on some flexibility to help our teachers get that done. But let's legislate it the right way. Let's give flexibility, let educators lead, make sure we're connecting to our business community to give our business community what it needs.
And so to Jim's point, just to follow up before we move on, because I don't want to lose sight of that, we use the businesses to help us with what should the outcomes be on the other end. And if we're meeting those for business, then we've done what we need to do. Yes?
I think Stephanie, she's behind the flowers over here.
What I keep hearing is we've got to make this champion. Everyone's successful here because they have a champion. They're their champion because they found their champion in business, or their champion in higher ed, or their champion because they're the champion at the district. We've got to figure out a way to institutionalize the champion as part of this framework. So, there is a larger state-based framework potentially, and then regional framework based on each region with somebody to be the convener. It's EWIN coming in and being the convener. It is a service center. I don't know what the answer is, but it's not going to work unless we have somebody that's not the district and not business convening and making the pathways happen for the specific region.
Just a question. I really like a lot of things that we've heard today. I've worked for Cummins, and we've done a lot with the communities and working with school systems. As a matter of fact, I've been very, very pleased with what we've seen with education. We're just working to bring industry now, right? But one of the barriers, I want to make sure there's no barrier here, is when I go out and talk to especially vocational schools or career tech eds, however you want to look at it, they struggle to find instructors. When they find them, they struggle to be able to pay them. So whatever changes we make, can we do something somehow, legislatively or what, to make sure that the instructors are paid appropriately, industry competitive, so you can maintain the instructors you need to help us. We've even heard folks say to some of the schools, well, can you loan us people to teach classes, right? Or can we bring them in? I think we're open to a lot of different ideas, but ultimately you have to have an instructor there every day. How do we get you the money? Or how does money come to you to pay them to keep them, right? And the other thing is we can use help with, again, what we in manufacturing struggle with is we don't have a WOW, a WOW. It's very difficult to get kids when we're competing with television series about culinary, cooking, medical, fire prevention or firefighting and criminal investigative shows and things. So whatever you can all do, help us find that wow to get kids interested. And what we're doing is we have some really wow things going on in all of our businesses. It's just getting them inside the door. So if that can be kind of thrown in there somehow, marketing, it's got to have a marketing element.
Steve, thanks for bringing that up. We talked a lot about parent involvement and convincing the parents. We were fortunate to be a part of a grant a couple years ago with the teacher externships. And so in our area, we had 6 or 7 teachers, and we paid them, whether it be a day or 5 days in the summertime, that went into local companies, some of them who had spouses that worked in them. They had no idea of the technical skills and the translatable skills. And one of the requirements of the grant was to create lesson plans that we took back to the classroom. And so when they're able to see what Lauren is able to do at her company or Wood Miser in our area, what the skills that are needed, and it's not the factory setting that maybe you stereotypical, and definitely, you know, not the wow factor sometimes, but it is skills that we're actually using in the day. It wasn't as much convincing to parents as who do a lot of times these kids trust is the person they report to every day for 180 days, the teacher saying this skill is directly translatable to Cummins, Batesville Tool and Die, name your company, name your industry. However you factor that back in, getting our people into these businesses outside of the normal day and incentivizing them to do so was a tremendous return on our investment.
Right, and we've learned also in what we've done in forming collaborations, so that Stephanie Weber's team, Echo 15, and John Burnett is hosting lunch and learn for counselors and teachers to get them even interested about what we're doing. And then later with the externships, like you're mentioning, so it's been a huge, great connection. We've had businesses come to the table once they were exposed to this that didn't realize that they can have that influence. So it's great partnerships now.
First of all, I appreciate Dr. Frias putting some flesh on the bones because I'm starting to be able to kind of visualize what something could look like. And I can see within those, whether they're majors or frameworks or academies, that there could be a real localized, there could be core aspects to that and a localized piece based on local particular needs. I've mentioned at prior meetings, I'm always concerned about the pendulum swinging too far, and I'm trying to process, you know, on the college-bound side of this, how this, what this might look like. And I just want to kind of follow up a little bit on Stephanie's comment as well. I have some concerns about, sounds great, but the manageability, or I guess scalability of taking this out, especially for small rural districts or charters, or in my case, privates, how this would all materialize. Because it seems to be, you know, the pre-work on getting it all together seems to be very, very labor intensive, and with limited administrative staff could be pretty challenging.
Senator Ross, I'm sitting for Senator Cruz today. I'm the ranking member of the Senate Education Committee. I'd like to refer to the question you had, Mr. Mackey, in that we changed some of the pathways for reimbursement for CT funding this year, but this is a full, what we're talking about here would be a full change essentially. So it'd have to be a great deal of work. And I'm speaking somewhat out of turn, I suppose, when we're talking about appropriations or ways and means in the House, but something would have to change drastically. As well, hats off to you, those of you in the school districts that have created these pathways for these students, for the most part, or 99% of the way, right, without state intervention. We went for assistance for some waivers to the Department of Ed, that the creativity and the necessity and the requirement. So hats off to you, most definitely. As well, I'd like to say that from my time in the General Assembly, which has been 3 years now, in many pockets of the state, programs work well. In other pockets, they don't work well at all. And so it has a lot to do with leadership and the type of leader that's actually in charge. It might be someone who's very organized. It might be someone like me who needs 3 or 4 people behind me to clean up the mess and keep going forward. And so, again, comes to leadership in each school district. And so putting trying to leave this thing that's open, I think, as much as possible to see success in the districts. One other important comment that I've heard made a couple of times is going to the employers and saying, what can we do for you? Not necessarily the employers coming to school saying, or us going to the school or the employers saying, this is what we're going to do, saying, what can we do? And it's regional. And so back to Representative Vaney's comments, and I think you as well, that there's some baseline things. I see from my time in the General Assembly, looking at the testing quagmire and all the things that have happened, it comes down to good leadership. I know schools that have made an A grade through the the testing changes and everything that have gone on in the ISTEP world, if you will. And that's not being pointing the finger at those who haven't made it. There are certainly different dynamics, just as we're looking at here, right, in each school district. And so I'm encouraged by today, and I think we can move forward. And I agree that there are core competencies that would include soft skills as a baseline, is a great place as a part that we need across the state. There's no doubt about the word using the term academy has some traditional, just you got a text, right? There's traditional meaning to that word that may create some negative connotations to it, but nonetheless, very good and very encouraged.
What I'm hearing is a common theme that collaboration with business partners is important for any pathway that we talked about. And what I'm also hearing is one size doesn't fit all. So how do we scale out Nate's size school, Andy's size school? So do we incentivize schools who are doing well, incentivize leaders to be magnets, or maybe I should use the word magnet, to be models of rural districts, metropolitan districts, suburban districts, and then that flexibility works. If you need trigonometry, if you need basic math skills, where you kind of have role models throughout the state of how things can be scaled out, how things work. And once again, there's going to be a higher level of accountability in these districts. But I think then you kind of personalize, provide flexibility to do things for our communities. Because ultimately, our job is to create productive citizens. We don't have to convince Batesville kids that Batesville is a great place to live, so we don't have to spend a lot of money on training them or recruiting from Chicago or Evansville. I think we all have great places to live. Let's start investing in our communities and grow locally.
On the two subjects, one, we talked about the subject of reputation, and certainly manufacturing has a reputation that needs to be built. People in the state have views of the way manufacturing used to be 40, 50 years ago. It's different now. And so we need to work on that. The second part is career ed is the redheaded stepchild. We all want everybody to have a 4-year degree, but that's not the real world. So how can we raise the stigma, or eliminate the stigma of career education? I think that needs to be done at the legislative level.
Thank you. Could we, just because, you know, I kept thinking as we were going through here, I was having the deal of we're going to need a bigger boat, and I'm thinking we're going to need more time, because this has been so great. And so I want to make sure that we keep with what has become our custom of letting everybody have the last word, so to speak. But I do want to give a chance to Shelby and Brianna, who are here we wanted some JAG representatives, some student representatives today. Brianna's not JAG, is she? Brianna is, okay. You're not, are you? Or you are too? You both are, okay. Whatever, keep me straight, thank you. But I'd like to hear from you all, because one of the pieces of this framework is this core skills, soft skills, what have you, and I know some of that's part of those programs as well as others. Can you give us any feedback on what you've heard today? We really value as a panel this student, what the students have to say. We would be remiss if I didn't take time to make sure you guys had some moments here.
So I don't know about you, but coming from a program like JAG and having them teach me not only the skills that I needed for the job, but also giving me the skills I needed to go to a 4-year college. I am from a very small school, and sometimes the small schools are swept under the table and not looked at as important, and so therefore your student's education is almost failed. And so I actually did not discover JAG, and it did not come into my school until my junior year. So I went into my junior year not knowing if I actually wanted to go to a 4-year college or if I would even have the skills to have a job after college. With that being said, this program definitely changed who I was, what I wanted to do with my future. I am now enrolled in a four-year college. I'm a junior with a major in public relations. That's not something I ever thought I would do. On top of that, that program also gave me my skills to be able to sit here and speak to you guys. This is super intimidating to me, being in a room with all you guys. But that gave me the skills. I wouldn't have a voice or the ability to sit in a job interview or internship opportunities right now if it weren't for these programs, or even academies. I had academies in high school that just helped me realize what pathway I wanted to go on, and without those in the school districts, you don't have anything. You are giving these people and these kids this education, but how do they use it? And so I do agree with you guys and everything you're doing right now, and I think it's great because honestly, doing these things now is going to help with the higher education.
To add on to what you said, nice to meet you, by the way, nice to meet all of you guys. What I'm hearing today is a lot of people with a common problem on hand. And to put in, I wanted to say that JAG really did change my life in a way that I never saw myself as a leader until after JAG. JAG gave me the opportunity to score my first job. In the interview for my first job, I used my JAG skills to impress my employer. And while I also have the floor, I wanted to say that I do agree with the academy version of, our resolution. I felt like also getting employers and people directly experienced in the field into the classroom and getting the kids into the work environment in which they'll be learning is helpful too, because I'm majoring right now in software development, and with JAG it was able to connect me with a job in software development, so that it was confirmed with me that I know I wanted to work in software and computers.
Thank you. Does anyone have a question for them?
I just want to say that that's what it's about. You have kids that all over the state who are dealing with all kinds of issues, all kinds of concerns, all kinds of challenges, and it's all about providing opportunity for them, personalizing where necessary to help them to become what these two young ladies have become. I mean, this is what it's all about. I'm just really proud of them.
So that's a perfect segue into our last portion here of what I'd like for you to do. We're going to go around the table. This has become our custom now in these of 6 now. 7th this afternoon, right? And I'm starting with you. I've already decided that, so you better start thinking. So what I'd like for you to do, last time we split it up between the panel and the collaborators. This time we're going to just go through everybody as we go. So you can do one of 2 things. You can choose, being the good teacher here, I'm going to give you a choice as to what you're going to do. Either give a value that you want to make sure that this panel next Tuesday, when we begin drafting what the pathway parentheses looks like, or what is something you want to make sure the panel knows needs to be a part of that pathway. Whether it's a part of these framework that we've talked about today, whether it's some kind of program that connects, what have you. So a value that you want carried into next Tuesday, or what does the pathway look like? What do you want to, what's the last thing you want this panel to know moving forward? Okay? That makes sense? You're on.
Thanks. I would reiterate that I'd like to see a framework with flexibility that has work-based learning continuing built in, as well as the core skills, whatever we define them as. And a credential would be my ideal, or some kind of credential that kids have as an outcome.
I ditto what she says. The only thing I would add on is I think it needs to be an industry-based. I would like to have credentialing such that we're not setting the standards, but it's something more to what the international model, so it's transferable and we can use it in multiple areas as opposed to just that one. The core would do that as well, yeah.
Being a manufacturer representative, we just want students to get in the door. We want to show them what we have, and then we want to be able to set the standard of what we need them to learn, because what we need them to learn at our facility is going to be different across the state. And so ultimately, we just need the students, and we'll take it from there.
Thank you. You know, one diploma type with multiple frameworks that doesn't create more stuff to do that, but it's already within our existing frameworks at school that incentivizes the work-based learning opportunities, whether we pay them or don't pay them. But we incentivize kids getting out of the building for career exploration, and that we have a relevant 40 credits, if that's the model. That if we get 40, that they're all relevant to whatever or more what we're going to do next.
Much of what we've described and had conversation today about really has been CTE. When we talk about partnering with our businesses and knowing what to teach, our state standards, our state CTE standards have been established with business partners. Our local CTE programs all have advisory committees that help guide the implementation of those standards and then the uniqueness within each region. We talked about work-based learning and not only the career awareness, but the experiential learning. And that is, again, a huge component of CTE, soft skills and work ethic. We talked about credentialing. That's a big component of CTE. So to develop pathways, I see CTE as being significant part of these pathway options for all students. And as Mr. Turk said, there is some stigma and some stereotyping that comes with CTE, and we have to break that down because CTE is for all students. Again, it's based upon your CTE should match your career choice, or your training should match your career choice, which could include CTE for any student.
Good. I hope we can continue to value the collaborative efforts that are going on between public school officials and manufacturing. Being a high school principal for 22 years, I can tell you that was kind of the last thing on my mind. I hate to confess that, but in our days, it was simply, we've got to deal with behavior issues. We're trying to use the Career Center as best as we can, but when it all got down to it, we did not do a very good job of talking to manufacturing. My job now is to meet with very large company CEOs across the state of Indiana, and it's been a blast to listen to them, because I think it's, we've gone a long time without really listening, and when you really listen to these guys, they really have real needs, and they know how to articulate it, and we got to figure out how to listen to their needs and get these kids in those slots. So many times in schools, we try to create our own agendas and create our own curriculum and create our own life, when in essence, how do we have a paradigm shift in education? I think that some are way ahead of others in this, but I think we're doing much better. How do we get this stuff that we're doing over here to fit this stuff over here? That's a challenge, and in part of the framework, and I think framework is a great word to use, how do we, in that framework, keep a high set of standards without going like, yeah, you work in a factory, that's fine, you graduated. How do we keep the high set of standards, and then where's the metric for effectiveness? And I think I've heard today that the metric for effectiveness has got something to do with what industry is saying is effective, and not necessarily us in our educational world. So where do we keep the high standards, and where's the metric of effectiveness?
You know how to follow up with that. That was really good. I feel like I say the same thing. My values and goals for this are the same, so I'm going to try to figure out how to say the same thing in a different way. But I think it's important, and I think it adds to what you said, is that we're making sure that whatever we develop has currency for the student, not just for their first job, but for jobs subsequent to that. And to add to what Chairman Boehning said as well, you know, we want to, it's not just what's for the next step, but for following steps after that. We need to make sure that when these students graduate, that they have the skills necessary to align with the job needs of the employers, making sure employers are at the table to develop those skills that are needed in the workforce so that they could be productive members, tax-paying citizens of the state. So.
Thank you for allowing me to be part of this today. I appreciate Wendy also being able to join you, and Alan has been a huge partner for us in our area as our CTE director in our area, so appreciate him very much. I hope, there's so much I would love to say. I'm totally sold on what we're doing. Our partnerships are outstanding. Our teachers are buying in. We're moving the needle in the direction I think you want as a panel to be moved in. We're open to being available to you at any point in time and to give you further information or whatever it takes. And I just think in addressing one of the other issues, Greater Clark County Schools has an urban-suburban component in Jeffersonville. It has a small town component in Charlestown. It has a rural component in New Washington. And so when we ask this question, how can we implement this in all those different environments, we are implementing it in that kind of diverse setting. And so I hope it's something. And the last thing I brought, if anybody wants a portrait of a graduate that our business community all bought into and produced. And so if anyone would want that, I'd be happy to share that. Thank you.
I'd like the top of a framework today with the idea of some flexible pieces for different areas, for different communities. But I still have to go back to, I think last week, we had all these experts from around the country in. They kept talking about make sure that you keep the rigor high and that all pathways have an equality to them and a rigor so that there's not a pathway that emerges that's kind of the checkoff list or the lower 10%. I think we've heard that concern today. And so Alan and I were talking. I'm such a huge proponent of work-based learning. I think we've heard over and over again how important that is to get that real-life experience. But in saying that, I came from a school where we ensured that it was a quality experience, and I'm afraid we've heard from all these schools where that's always a quality experience, but I don't want to get caught up in the naivete that it might be that same quality everywhere in Indiana without applying some sort of standards or definitions of what does quality work-based learning look like. Otherwise, we might get things that not everyone defines as quality. So I think that's something that's resonating with me as we get ready to get down to business and define these frameworks.
Equality is the same thing. I agree with equality. Develop an equal option for students, whether they want to go to manufacturing on the floor, to a skilled trade, to college. Offer them equal and have them uniform. They don't need to be fully trained, but they need to have a different background. And try to develop a way to change we both mentioned the stigma of manufacturing. It's a viable career for many people.
Thank you, first of all, for your invitation today. I do appreciate it. My takeaway for Graduation Pathways panel is if I could plant one seed, it is the local flexibility to incentivize work-based learning partnerships. And in doing so, recognizing schools as almost a gold standard to serve as models so that there is fidelity for other schools to replicate.
Okay, so I could repeat the CTE, super important. I could repeat the flexibility framework, all great stuff. I'm going to throw this out there. Let's get rid of the college and career verbiage. Because I think the college is that 20%, the career is the 10%. Just in the name, we're losing that 70% in between. Yes, I know apprenticeship is a career, an academy is a career, 2 years of college. That's beautiful. You and I know this. Our students don't. Our parents don't. Marketing campaign, I don't care, but we got to get away from that college and career thinking because it's set in stone right now. We spent 40 years shoving college readiness. Now we're trying to do college and career, and it ain't working. So that's outside the box thinking, but that's my point.
Well, thank you for allowing us to be here. One of the things that I will tell you that I think is inspiring is the fact that if you look at the K-12 leadership around the table, there is disruptive innovation taking place. And if you want to see it happening, I suggest come visiting any of our school districts that are here today to see what that looks like. And we don't have it all figured out, but what we are doing is we're taking theories of action and putting them into action plans. And I think that's where a lot of the conversation, I can tell from a lot of leadership, we're going to start moving forward with action plans, and we're going to do it regardless in our school district. So things that I think moving forward, it's not just about a transcript anymore for our students. It can't just be about a transcript. It has to be about stackable credentials. It has to be about badging. It has to be about real skills that are going to be used in your business, and others. I think that we need to be looking at a framework that's personalized, and there's a balance between the higher ed and industry and what the needs are. Let's focus on competency-based tools such as e-portfolios and badging and stackable certifications. But once again, moving past, it's not just about a transcript anymore. We cannot allow students to continue to walk across our stage just with a transcript.
What I've heard is that maybe it's time for us to change the definition of CTE in the state of Indiana. Think about also in terms of changing the implementation. Maybe we take it down to like some other states have done into the elementary schools and maybe middle schools. And then change the perspective from the parent side, from the student side, from the district side on who's right for CTE and who should be in it. The other thing I would say is to get anyone in a true career pathway, career exploration has to start in kindergarten. So we have to figure out how we're going to take this down to that level of a student to make sure that we get them where they need to be when they graduate.
Being a director of college and career readiness, sometimes it's hard to even talk about college and career readiness in those terms because lots of times people often will say college or career. They replace the and with the or, and I obviously don't look at it that way. And one of the things that I think is very difficult for people to break away from is a mentality that we have as a college for all mentality, and we need to redefine those terms. College or career technical education has helped us redefine the importance of looking at post-secondary training in a different way, and that was one of the things that I would like to make sure that people understand is that the old way of looking at, college for all, and I understand that we will always have different types of jobs that require different levels of education. We just absolutely cannot close the door on anyone's opportunity. There are people that must learn in an experiential way. That's really the only way that they can be able to understand and learn. So we cannot not have that opportunity. So the work-based learning that we've been talking about is awesome, but you can do experiential learning in an AP class. You can do experiential learning in a dual credit class. I was very fortunate to go through Butler's EPPSP program, which was completely experiential in preparing me to be a school principal. I could not have learned what I learned in any other way and have been as successful as I had been. And I do believe that we need to offer those same opportunities for our students. When you look at the job proportions out there in the world now, it's been the same way for about 50 years. For every one professional degree earned, there are 2 bachelor's degrees, and there is a need for 7 highly skilled jobs. And we are certainly not preparing our students for that ratio. And that is why we have so many jobs that are out there being unfilled right now. So one of the keys that I would like to have everyone take away today is that we need to look at a competency-based process that will allow people to be able to demonstrate the skills that have been defined by people in the business and industry world, that they will then meet those needs going out into the world.
Thank you.
I just want to thank everyone for having me here today. And I wanted to put emphasis on the living quarters for kids who may be in the inner city. I know when I was in school, school was a way for me to get away from the hostile environment from my home. So I believe, it's really hard to focus and think that school matters when you're thinking about when you have to go back home to the harsh environment. So for the model that we're building, I believe that living quarters would be, beneficial to kids whose home facilities may not encourage schoolwork or even the talk of school at all. And also, I believe within the living quarters, there should be an emphasis on teaching brotherhood and teamwork, because there can be a community if no one, believes in banding together. But.
Thank you.
I've heard a lot of good ideas here. I don't know if I can add to them per se. I guess I want to express a concern. I've heard about the program in Clark County. Terrific. I know more about Batesville because of my association with Jody Flaterman and others at Hillenbrand and all that. Terrific programs. Need to be replicated around the state. They're super. My concern is my participation on the Region 5 Works Council, which I know is sponsored by a different agency. It was just the lack of involvement by key school systems in that process and my disappointment. And so the question is how do you engage the non-motivated, or I wouldn't want to call them unable, but there are just certain districts in the state that aren't going to get it. And so how do you bring them to the table?
I wanted to say I was excited about today, and today was a great discussion where the first time, maybe for me, because I'm not, as a parent, this is the first time where I can see it, okay, it's coming together. I can see where we could do, and it could be replicated in the state. My value is always pretty much the same, and it's opportunity. And I can see that there are opportunities available. I think choices empower students. And that empowers parents. As a parent, all I want is my kids to be successful. And I think when they have more choices, there are more opportunities for success.
I too appreciate the conversation, because after 6 meetings, things are starting to kind of fall into place. I guess my takeaways from today are the 3 F's, and I'll throw in a 4th. We continue to hear flexibility. We heard frameworks. We've heard funding, and making sure that it's one thing to put the structure together, but can we resource it to make it happen? And then I'll add, which I mentioned earlier, my F will be feasibility, and is it feasible in all areas and in all sectors?
Thank you for spending your time tackling such an important issue. I think that when we think back in where I live and what I do, I don't really know that all these conversations about policy are taking place, so thank you for opening my eyes to that. In the question of value, I do also appreciate the value of collaboration, but I also would caveat that with it needs to be coordinated collaboration. Just asking people to go forth and collaborate is not as easy as it sounds. If we didn't have working together the Forward Next Generation Learning Framework to work with under, that collaboration could have fallen apart very easily. Mr. Watson, as a manufacturer, doesn't want the school system coming in on Monday and the chamber coming in on Tuesday and higher education coming in on Wednesday, all asking him for something. So we could have turned off our business community very easily if we had not been coordinated and in lockstep as we were approaching them. Same with education. I'm sure you don't want all the different businesses of all types coming to you asking for something each day of the week. So let's just keep in mind that these things don't just happen organically. At least they happen in Greater Clark County schools. They haven't with New Albany Floyd County schools. Instead, it's taken this coordination of a collaboration through coordination under something that makes sense at the local level.
My takeaway today is the fact that without a doubt we have core skills that we want all students to have. I think we can all agree upon that. And the conversation has led to, obviously Greater Clark's the example that I feel like we really need to take a close look at because it's working. But when we make sure that we give those schools, those districts the freedom that when they go in and they talk, they ask the questions of Jeff Miller, they ask the questions of Cummins, that they have the freedom to then give them what they're asking for. We can't be too prescriptive in what we get to limit what schools can do. If we're going to go in, we're going to ask those questions, which we need to ask, regionally based, those answers may be different. So while we obviously have an end game in mind, we want everybody to be, we need to make sure that we give school districts the freedom to, when they ask those questions, to deliver on what they're being asked.
I just wanted to say thank you for letting me come today. This is actually really eye-opening for me. I think for me, I value opportunity a lot because of everything that I had to go through with getting to where I am today. And that means giving the opportunity not only to the people who don't necessarily see themselves in a four-year college, but also giving them the opportunity to see themselves in a workplace one day and making money and not being in the low-income jobs. So for me, taking away what I did today, opportunity is necessary if you want to see success later in the future.
Well, I'm going to start with an introduction. I'm Josh Garrison. I'm here on behalf of Jason Beers with the Commission for Higher Education. And I enjoy being part of this session today. I've watched you online for the past few meetings, so it's nice to finally sit at the table. I think I've taken away a lot of positive things today. One thing that I hope we remember, going back to the question at the beginning, as we start these frameworks, is that with our attainment level at 42nd in the nation, we need all levels of attainment, not just the 4-year, not just the 2-year, not just the certificate and industry-based certifications, but all levels. And to do that, I think we have to maintain the rigor that we have, but we have to also do, I think what Stephanie said earlier, is make sure that career exploration takes place earlier, that we have a common set of communication that can cross over from higher education, K-12, and business, because we all do speak a different language, and try to figure that one out. And then on top of all that, make sure that it's student-centric, that, as we heard from the students today, make sure that we're keeping a pathway that's in mind for them.
There's nothing I disagree with. I've heard. I'm very confident to come up with what we need, and I just ask that we enable the administrators in these school districts to be able to market, enable them to implement the curriculum, whatever that may take, and facilitate it.
I'm going to throw out a different word that I think describes what I've been hearing at these meetings, and it's something that I believe in, and that word is hooks. I think a successful grad pathway program needs to hook the student. Rob, I think the crossing, I think you've hooked the student. You've got them to where they're self-motivated, and they're so excited now to learn about their job and to learn and get their education at the same time. Often, for years, I was a head wrestling coach, and I always believed and still believe that certain activities at school beyond the regular day, like wrestling, were the hook that motivated kids to want to come to school so they could get that diploma that would open the doors after they left us in high school. So I think a successful plan, we need to keep in mind that hook.
I want to piggyback off of Carol's word, currency, and thinking that, every student does need a currency, but we need to make sure that that has value that will help them achieve all levels of attainment, whatever that is mandated by industry, if it's associate's degree, credential, wherever that is, but that is also transferable, whether that's from the classroom to the workplace or from industry to industry. I think, I know I've been a career switcher many times, and I think it's realistic to expect the same thing, obviously, with the coming generations. So there has to be transferability. And very self-serving comment coming from Next Tech, but we argue that is the critical thinking, the problem solving, the cognitive flexibility, and computer science is a great way to introduce that. And there's other models, if you will, but every pathway has to have intentional focus on curriculum that develops those skills and that currency for the student.
I think a couple of things. I have to agree with Representative Vaining on the industry certifications. I think that would help us as a state not to be creating things or having to change things behind the Department of Ed and looking for permissions all the time to behave in a certain way. But certainly to be flexible and to unlock the abilities for the young folks to become what they desire to be, and as well, my thought process was, I've changed probably 3 times now, and so generations beyond us are going to change multiple times, I'm certain, in their lifetimes. But this is a paradigm shift, back to Rob Staley, and hopefully we make it through this paradigm shift successfully before the next one comes along, the next generation, right? To be able to be forward thinking enough to be able to respond and be proactive instead of, all of us around the table a decade ago, we never would have thought we'd be having this conversation, I'm certain, right? So, looking forward.
Thank you. For me, it became, I always cringe at the phrase, those kids, right? And we all say it, I do, guilty, because we do that. But for me today is that this is such important work to eliminate these kids and those kids. And that we have it right for all kids. And so that for me is the big takeaway, that we need to keep working really hard, get these pieces in place so that we can do that. With that, I want to first of all say, who would have thought that a meeting where we use the F word so much could be as effective as it's been, right? And so, you cringe when I start to come up with these things, right? But I think the other piece is, there were people who cringed when I said, we need 2 more meetings. We need another business and industry, and we need another higher ed. Higher ed yet to come, but I can tell you, don't really care what anybody else thought. This was important, and this was really good. And anybody that thinks differently is not thinking, in my opinion. Because we had the right people at the table, and this was a really good discussion. And I think it was said by panel members, we are a whole heck of a lot further 3 hours later now than when we started, than where we were, to have a framework. And I appreciate, on behalf of the entire panel, all the work that you've done on this. Couple of things, last things, there are some folks that brought handouts. My neighbor here brought handouts. We've got handouts from Carter County, thank you. And so anybody else that brought those, please leave those out if somebody wants to grab those, or get them to Alicia and we'll get them to the right place. The next thing is, we will start our next meeting right at 1 o'clock. That will be with higher education. You're welcome to stay and listen to that meeting as well. And then lunch is where? It'll be in this room. Lunch. How about that segue? We have lunch for panel and collaborators, so we said we provide that. And if anybody for the next panel has come in, we have that lunch for those collaborators as well. So make sure you take part of that. Again, thank you so very much. We stand adjourned.
Yeah.